We are shown an ordinary apartment building. Immediately, the protagonist heard the sound of SMS. He was sitting with the phone in his hand and crying a lot, and his heart was broken. The girl wrote to the guy that she wants to break up with him. The name of the protagonist is Chen Yuan. He wrote with very nervous fingers to Tun what happened and why she made such a decision. He thought that he and his roommates decided to play truth or dare. He asked her not to do this to her. His feelings for her are more than serious. He even sent her a smiley face where the guy is holding his hair. He didn't understand what he had done wrong. He didn't think he was good enough, but he had already planned out their future together. They would have a wonderful family, 2 beautiful children, a house and a car. He has been doing his best to bring this to life. The protagonist was typing all this and crying a lot. He suggested that it was all because he couldn't buy her a purse. He assured her that he was saving up and would be able to buy it next month when the scholarship came. A notification immediately appeared that she had blocked it and the last message was not delivered. The protagonist believed that life was a pain. Immediately his friend came to him and realized that he was in a bad mood today. He quickly turned around and apologized for bothering him. The protagonist hit the table hard with his fist and his bowl of noodles fell to the floor. He left the room and his friends noted that he was abandoned again, and this is the 6th time this month. After we are shown a busy street, the girls recognized Chen Yuan and considered him a stickler. He's been chasing Shu Tong for 3 years. Tong asked Chen not to do this because people are looking at them. The protagonist handed her a bag and said that he understood that she was angry, but he bought her favorite fried pork. He asked her not to talk about the breakup anymore. If she doesn't like something about him, she can always tell him and he will change. 2 friends heard all this and the girl said that she heard that Chen worked 4 jobs at once so that he could afford to give her gifts. And there is no result, she left him anyway. The girl replied that she was not angry with him. Her ex-boyfriend wants to get together with her. After much thought, she came to the conclusion that he really needed more. The protagonist screamed a lot because it was Huang Zhengkai, and he didn't understand how. Chen said he was a scumbag and asked her if she had forgotten how he had deceived her and she was letting him powder her brains again. Immediately, an expensive Mercedes car drove up from behind. The window came down and it was Huang himself. He told Shu Tong to jump into his car. The girl came up to her and opened the door saying that it was better for them not to meet again, because her boyfriend might not understand correctly. After that, she got into the car and they drove forward, while the protagonist looked at the road. He obviously threw Tong's favorite food in the trash. Chen walked into a local convenience store. He took a bottle of water and started drinking it. He didn't understand why no one appreciated sincerity. He thought he was so worthless that he could only suck up to everyone. Immediately, he squeezed the empty bottle and felt that there was nothing wrong with being courteous. He was very angry and realized that he only needed to do it properly and then he would become not a sycophant, but a Casanova. A system window immediately appeared, which informed that the strongest system of the stickler had identified a suitable candidate for the role of host. The connection was successful. He had personal funds of 230 yuan, but the account of the system stuck 90 quadrillion yuan. The protagonist was shocked by the system and did not understand what it was. He reached forward to the girl's melons and wondered what this system allows you to do. Immediately, the girl shouted so that the pervert looked at what he was doing and watched his hands, and the protagonist was very surprised and confused. It was a blue-eyed blonde who thought that he had been staring at her from the very beginning and added that he was definitely not right in the head. Her name is Zhu Liu. She is 21 years old. Her attractiveness index is 7.9, and her disposition towards Chen is 50. The protagonist was still in shock and did not fully understand what was happening and what kind of data he would see in front of him. The system added that only the location parameter will reach 96 points. It will be possible to make a counterattack and she will become a fan of the owner. 1-2. The protagonist looked at the system window, where it was written about 96 points and thought that it was possible to use the system. The protagonist did not understand whether he needed to spend this money on women. 90 quadrillion. The system agreed. She said that the entire amount is on this card, but only women can use it. When the user of the card becomes a fan of the owner, a tenth of the amount spent will be credited to the owner's personal account and can be used at his request. In addition, the owner can receive other rewards. The protagonist also understood how things are here. He thought that he could use this girl as a test mouse and smiled maliciously. He asked the beautiful lady not to be angry. He assured her that whatever she wanted today, everything was at his expense. The system reported that the implementation of the stickler was successfully completed. Task: counterattack Zhu Liu reward for execution, 10% of system funds, 5 gain points. The girl thought that he was pretending to be rich and just wanted to show off in front of her. She didn't believe he could do anything at all. People discussed and said that it was Sui Leal, the first beauty of the Faculty of Art. The guy had heard that she was quite adept at spending other people's money. Somehow, she only had a couple of words and the man spent 30,000 yuan on her, and they thought that the protagonist had big problems. Chen asked her not to rush into words, because until you try, you won't know. The girl held out her phone and said that today was such a good day, and why not treat all the classmates with sweets in the buffet. She asked if he would help with the financial part of the issue. The girl noted that he was dressed like a beggar but was trying to show off in front of the beauty. She wanted to show him what a real shame is. Immediately he paid and 50,000 yuan was credited to her account, and the girl was surprised and embarrassed. Everyone was surprised that he just took and transferred 50,000 yuan as if it didn't cost anything. This guy looks as unremarkable as possible. And now it turns out that he is actually a major. The protagonist noted that 50,000 is not so much. Then he showed his phone and smiled and said that it was enough to get her WeChat. The girl assumed that she was mistaken and this guy is really a major. She smiled and decided to act. Sui approached him and asked him not to worry. She decided to add WeChat, and the protagonist was surprised. Immediately she approached him and added that from the beginning he would go to the same place with her. And the protagonist became even more confused and even began to sweat. She wanted to see how long he would last. After that, she went out onto a busy street where it was already night. To begin with, she would like to clarify something. She is not a mercantile girl at all. She just wants to understand how sincere and serious he is towards her, and she took him to the store with the most expensive clothes. The protagonist thought about how the more she spent, the more he would get back. Chen said there was no problem with that, and she could choose whatever she liked. Tame your appetite, my dears, and you will conquer human nature. Just a wonderful sample for testing the system. The protagonist was looking at the handbags and heard Tong telling Xingyunkai whether this handbag suits her. He turned back and saw Shu Tong with her new boyfriend. The girl immediately drew attention to the protagonist. 1-3. The protagonist was very surprised and even a little panicked. Sui realized that this was his ex-girlfriend and that she was at the wrong time. The protagonist replied that it was just the opposite and smiled at her. Sui approached the saleswoman and asked if they had a handbag from the spring show. The girl replied that she was the last one left. However, another client is now trying it on and pointed to the ton. She also thought that Chen would not leave her alone, and she wanted to show him that a loser like Chen was not Junkai's rival. Tong said that her birthday was coming soon and turned to Juan. The blonde looked up from the phone and was surprised because she had recently celebrated it. The girl replied that it was a birthday according to the lunar calendar, but it should be soon according to the solar calendar. The blonde man looked at her in silence. He smiled and told her to listen to him carefully. She knows that he doesn't like mercantile girls. He asked her if she was with him not only for money. The girl was very scared and tensed up. After that, Sui took the purse and snatched it from Tong. She asked for forgiveness and added that if they did not buy, then she would take it for herself. The system reported that the location of Sui Leal to the protagonist increased by 20%. The protagonist at the same time paid for his purse with his card. Its location has also increased by 20%. It was growing by leaps and bounds. The protagonist realized that this is the true power of money. Some kind of bag, and he already has 60 points in his pocket. At this rate, a couple more bags and they will achieve the desired result. The protagonist thought that the cashback could have been bigger, of course. The shop workers were talking among themselves. The girl told Xiao Lai that she didn't understand. Why are people who look like they were born with a golden spoon in their mouth so stingy towards their women? And those who look unremarkable are ready to spend such sums. The store manager told them many times that they should not be biased against guests. Appearances are deceptive. Tun heard all this and was very angry. Sui said that she and the bag and the guy were taken by a better owner. She looked at the protagonist, who was carefully examining the bags. She believed that such a big fish should not be missed. Sui hugged his hand and thanked him and called him dear. She thought he was very generous. At this time, Sui saw all this and began to cry. The girl hit Chen Yuan and said that it was too much, which surprised him. The protagonist smiled and did not understand, because this is not too much. He laughed and said they were just getting started. Immediately, Huang ran after Tong, and the system informed him that a second object had been found. Lin Shu Tong, her attractiveness rating, 7.5 points, and the disposition to the host, -10. As soon as the location parameter reaches 96 points, it will be possible to make a counterattack and she will become a fan of the owner. Reward for performing this maneuver, 10% of the system bank, 20 gain points. She approached him and asked if he was amused. She was not averse to playing along and asked where they were going next. The protagonist was surprised by her words. After the girl showed that she wanted this costume. Then another bag, why would she need two? The protagonist said that in addition to these two, everything else also needs to be wrapped and will pay with a card. The saleswoman was in shock, and Sui looked at him with loving eyes. The girl agreed with him. They will pack and deliver the selected items to the address specified by him. Sui thought that men with money were so attractive, and she had a lot of bags with things in her hands. The location of Sui Leal increased by 5%. After they went to buy expensive perfumes and her disposition increased again by 5%. Then they bought her an expensive lipstick and makeup bag and increased by 5% again. They bought a lot of clothes and the disposition continued to grow by leaps and bounds. Sui felt that this was enough. If they continued, she was afraid that all this would not fit into her apartment. He was surprised at her words and replied that it was not a problem, because he would buy her an apartment. The girl felt that it was somehow not good, because he had already spent so much money, and this was only their first meeting, but she just wanted to joke. Its location is again at 5%. The protagonist realized that he had scared her. Indeed, if he had been told that they would buy him a house worth several million, he would also have experienced some inconvenience. The protagonist said that she was in the 3rd year of the Art Institute, 21 years old, 165 centimeters, 49 kilograms. Favorite color is black. Favorite cuisine is Korean. Zodiac sign is Capricorn. Shoe size 37. Loves horror movies, but most of all is afraid to walk down the street alone at night. She was shocked by his words. The protagonist asked her if he didn't like all this, would he behave so recklessly? He asked the saleswoman if they had a member's savings card. He wanted to replenish it by 500,000. The next time this girl comes here, she needs to recommend the best to her. The girl agreed with him and asked him to wait a little. The protagonist said that this card was for her to smooth out the impression after an unsuccessful joke about buying an apartment, which scared her so much. The girl was just in shock and blushed deeply. He approached her and added that if she was uncomfortable, she could offer him something interesting in return. The girl pushed him away and thought he was a pervert. Her disposition has increased by 30% again. The saleswomen were shocked, because this guy is so plain in appearance, but so rich. Not just rich, but also very generous. He cares so much about his woman. The protagonist thought that if he had money, no matter who he was and how he behaved, he would get away with everything. The girl noted that he bought her a lot of gifts and asked why he should not think about himself. The protagonist jokingly spread his hands and said that he had no money. The girl turned around and said that now it was her turn to give him a gift. She took his hand and pulled him along. She was thinking that if she wants to catch this big fish for a long time, then she should invest in it. After that, they show us a big night city. The protagonist and Sui were choosing men's t-shirts and he was a little surprised. Then they went to the barber shop to give him a nice haircut. Then he came out and showed himself to the girl and literally sparkled all over. Its location has increased by 5%. The girl was surprised that he was so attractive. It was worth just dressing up a little. The girls in the background also thought he was very handsome. Her disposition continued to grow by leaps and bounds. 1-5. He approached her and asked her how she was. He thought it was a little strange. Chen is already an adult, but this is the first time he has encountered something like this. Fortunately, he didn't have to spend money on it. The girl approached him and replied that it was nothing strange. She thinks they look good together now. Then the girl let go of his hands. She started to leave and noted that she was so happy today. She thanked Chen. For a moment she even thought she was in love and blew him a kiss. She wanted to see him again. In total, Sui Leal's disposition was already 68%. The protagonist then returned to his home. He opened the door to the room and his friends were very surprised with his new image. The guy asked what he had been doing all day and what he was wearing. The protagonist picked up the phone and replied that he was on a date with Zhu Leal. The guy was surprised with his words, because he had not decided anything with Lin Shutong, but he had already taken up Zhu Leal. The guy with glasses replied that Zhu Leal was the first beauty of the Faculty of Arts. He was wondering what would happen to him if he was abandoned again. A friend hugged the protagonist and told him to listen to the brothers and added that he could not afford this girl. The protagonist thanked them for their advice. The protagonist wrote a message to Shutong and said that if he really hated her so much, then she wanted to remove each other from friends. Chen was happy because fortunately, these manipulations no longer work for him. If they delete each other, then he won't be able to earn extra money from her. He wrote that how could she say that, because she knows that she is special to him. The girl replied that she was with Juan not because she needed his money, but because her mother was sick. We need 50,000 yuan for treatment. Immediately, the protagonist sent her 50,000 via WeChat. She was just in shock and screamed all over the room. She barely mentioned it and he immediately transferred the money. Her friend asked who this rich man was who was throwing away such money, and she assumed that it was Huang Junkai. Shu Tong replied that to hell with this Huang, he couldn't even buy her a simple bag. This is Chen Yuan and he transferred the money to her. A friend was surprised because she just broke up with him today. She was surprised that this poor bastard had such money. Tun realized that this was her mistake and she decided to ask directly. Its location has increased by 5%. The girl asked what all this meant, where he got so much money from, and she was wondering what his relationship with Zhu Liel was and whether he bought her a bag. The girl added, was he really born with a golden spoon in his mouth after all? She wanted roast pork and sent him a smiley face. She asked if he didn't love her anymore. She wrote all this with a stony face. She was wondering why he wasn't answering and thought he had fallen asleep. The protagonist also set the status do not disturb. He thought Lin Shutong was too talkative. Zhu Liel is not so hasty in this regard. He wondered where else he could spend a lot of money on a woman. Immediately he realized that he could try with live broadcasts, and clicked on the icon in his phone. He went to the broadcast. The girl's name is Xiao Mir and she said that she will be online for just an hour, and the guys should hurry up with gifts. The protagonist went under the nickname Lone Wolf. He texted her in the chat that he wanted to be her friend. They asked him, it's not funny to him, some kind of new name with such requests. Philin added that it would cost a pretty penny, millions is far from the limit. Kakarot said that this idiot wouldn't throw 100,000. Immediately, everyone started laughing at the protagonist. Chen understood that millions is much more than the price for handbags. He realized that he was in the right place. He started sending her gifts. Immediately, Xiao Mir began thanking him for the rocket and showed him a heart. Immediately she was very surprised and was literally shocked. He started sending them an incredibly huge number of pieces, from which she blushed and did not know what to do. 1-6. All the guys shocked that the protagonist sent 100 cancer, because it's 1 million yuan. Immediately, the guy with the nickname Airplane realized that the guy had spent a lot of money. The mind realized that they had a rich man here and apologized. The charmer wrote to Sugar Daddy to punish her. Kakarot wrote that she was also nothing so he could pay her. The protagonist considered all of them snobs. He was sitting on his bed and staring at the phone, wanted to please them a little more. He pressed the rocket again and decided to send them as many as 900 pieces. A notification appeared on the stream that the lone wolf pleased with a rocket and far from one. The whole phone was in rockets that were flying forward. After that, they show us a large building and someone shouted that something incredible had happened. He went into his boss's office and said that some unknown rich man had just unbuckled 10 million yuan to Mir. He choked on the water and spat it out. The man asked, and this is definitely not some kind of fraudster. It was a lot of money and he assumed that someone was laundering money. After that, they show us the streamer's rest room. There were beautiful girls who wanted to write to a lone wolf as soon as possible. They had his ID, and they all wanted to get money from him. A bunch of girls started writing to him and saying that just a couple of rockets would cover their monthly salary. Xiao Mir was shocked. She didn't know if it was a dream and if she really had been paid 10 million. She pinched herself and it hurt. Immediately, someone started whispering to her. It was a guy with a sign on the bark. It was written that the boss said that you need to take a lone wolf into circulation and he gives an additional 10%. The girl smiled viciously, because she didn't even need to talk, as if she herself would have given such a large fish to others. The girl immediately began to thank the lone wolf. She wanted him to send her a private message and she would thank him properly. Xiao Mir wrote to him herself and asked if he was here. She said that her broadcast will last another 5 minutes. She asked him to reply to her message. The protagonist was already asleep and had all sorts of cool dreams. After that, the next day came and they show us the protagonist's dorm again. In the news in the first place was the news that the mysterious rich man spent 10 million in the shark. His identity is still a mystery. Immediately the guys shouted that someone had spent 10 million. The bespectacled man said that it was too much. In his city for such money it would be possible to buy several apartments. He wanted someone to give him money as well. The protagonist was thinking about it. Another guy said that he hopes that today he will have a dream in which he will be the richest person. The protagonist was brushing his teeth and was surprised that he spent so much money yesterday, and the system was not legal with Xiao Mir. He looked at the bound representatives of the fair sex. There were only Zhu Liel and Lin Shutong. The protagonist thought that this really requires a personal meeting. That is, all his money was wasted. He clicked on the shark icon. A lot of different girls wrote to him and everyone wanted his attention and communication. He was surprised how many messages were written to him. The guys left and waited for miracles with impatience. The bespectacled man said that he needed to go soon, because all the good places would be sorted out. The protagonist asked them what they were doing and why they didn't call him. The guy replied that they were going to class. Today was an open lesson and they wanted to enjoy the beauty of Zhao Yuki. The bespectacled man noted that he used to run ahead of them, and after the lesson he did not want to leave. Another guy asked him if Chen was coming or not. The protagonist remembered Zhao Yuki, whom he liked. 1:7. After that, they show us the university where the protagonist studies. We are shown Zhao Yuki herself. She is the chairman of the student union of Hunan University, and the dream of all guys. Everyone was already sitting at their desks and waiting for the lesson to begin. She played the piano. The chairman of the ballet troupe has a second class in fencing. Incredible appearance and a lot of talents make her an elusive dream of all guys. The protagonist was thinking that this beauty of Hunan University has been keeping to herself all this time. And in 3 years of training, no one has managed to conquer this Everest yet. The girls looking at the protagonist were just shocked and literally fell in love with him. They did not know who it was and believed that he had transferred from another group, because they had not seen him before. The protagonist also thought that since she is so impregnable, this is a great opportunity to get a good cash back. And he laughed angrily. Immediately, Tong's friend saw Chen Yuan. She noted that he had changed so much over the past couple of days. She thought he was dressing up to impress her. The girl thought that it was so, but she has Junkai. She was worried that they might quarrel because of her. Its location is 30%. She and her friend were almost already in love with him. The protagonist noted that it cost him a little to dress up and her attitude towards him improved. He considered her a really shallow woman, but he didn't care. He wondered how he could add Zhao Yuki to the system. Immediately, someone started shouting for someone to show them how he would conquer the beautiful Zhao Yuki. The protagonist drew attention to this. The guy told everyone to look carefully. He assured that she would now fall in love with him completely and irrevocably. The guy approached her and asked her for WeChat. The protagonist began to get angry, because the one he noticed was being taken away right in front of his eyes. Immediately another guy asked him what he was doing and began to get angry. The guy didn't care and he approached Zhao and said that he would like to get to know each other a little and start dating. But before he could finish, he was grabbed by the collar and he was surprised. He put it on the desk and pointed the pen, asked what this brat was up to. He ordered not to touch Zhao Yuki. It turned out that it was not a guy, but a girl. Her name is Xiaofai and she is Zhao's roommate. The guy said it was all just a misunderstanding. He wanted to join the student union. Zhao Yuki is the chairman. He just wanted to ask for advice and assured that she just misunderstood. The girl replied that she did not think so and that this was some kind of excuse to pick up a girl, and ordered him to get out of here and hit the one that he started screaming and howling. She thought it was even funny, as if a toad was showing off in front of a swan. He made her very angry, and Zhao asked her to calm down. Immediately, the protagonist approached the girls and told Zhao Yuki that he would like to add her to WeChat. Xiaofai began to get angry that another one had appeared and that there was no end to them. Zhao, surprised, turned to him. Xiaofai didn't understand what kind of hype it was today. The protagonist asked her if he could and handed him the phone. The girl thought that this guy is so brave. He is not afraid to lose face in front of the whole group. She didn't understand where he got such self-confidence from. Xiaofai noted that the protagonist is at least prettier. She asked if he also wanted to join the student union. The protagonist spread his arms and replied that he was not very interested in all these student movements. Xiaofai asked what Zhao Yuki's WeChat was for. The protagonist replied, "Isn't it obvious?" He wanted to hit on her and stretched out his hand forward. 1:8. Zhao Yuki was greatly surprised and even blushed at his words. Immediately, the whole group began to be indignant and did not believe that he was serious and believed that he was crazy. They wanted to see where he would have his confidence when he would cry after being dumped. The girl smiled at him. Zhao decided to try dating him and took out her phone. Shu Tong's friend laughed and asked if he was not her personal dog and if there were any problems. Tun began to get angry. The protagonist understood that the desire for beauty is not alien to anyone, so why hide it? All the guys started crying and getting angry because Chen managed to get such a girl. One even noted that his goddess would get to this pig. The protagonist did not understand who said that simplicity is bad. Sometimes the most obvious is also the most effective. Who doesn't like being paid attention to? Immediately, the system reported that a new target had been found. Currently, the location of Zhao Yuki is 0. She added Chen and he was glad that everything worked. After that, the protagonist and his friends left the university, and the guys noted that the protagonist is on a roll today. Even managed to get Zhao Yuki's WeChat. Another guy mentioned that he had changed quite a lot lately. The guy added that if everything works out with Zhao Yuki, then he should ask her to introduce them to her pretty girlfriends. The protagonist also noted that he had not done anything yet. She is the most beautiful girl of the university and should not carry nonsense. Immediately, someone shouted to the protagonist that he was a smug bastard. It was that guy with his friends. He noted that Chen is smart. Chen asked if he wanted to embarrass himself even more. He could learn from this. Immediately his friends realized that he wanted to start a fight and that he was too self-confident and could start a war. Immediately he began to get very angry and wanted to kill him. He assured him that he had assured him that he remembered him. His friends held him with the last of their strength, because he had to forget what they were told at the station. If they fight again, they will be fined again. The protagonist replied and felt that he was very sorry for him. Immediately he noticed. It was Zhu Liu. She noted that he was very slow and that she had been waiting for him for a long time. She looked incredible. Immediately, all the guys got angry when they saw Zhu Liu, the first beauty of the Faculty of Arts, 6th in the ranking of beauties of the whole university, nicknamed the thunderstorm of heterosexuals. The protagonist realized that he was a fool to keep such a beauty waiting. If she would let him, he would treat her to dinner as an apology. She replied that it was not worth it. She was wondering how she looked and whether he liked her, because he bought her all these things. The protagonist replied that everything looks great on her, and this bag looks just amazing. All this was heard by Tun, who was angry. The two of them went ahead and Zhu noted that people also like it and the protagonist agreed with her. The guy who wanted to fight with the protagonist started crying, because he doesn't understand what's wrong with him. Immediately someone repeated the same thing. The guy turned around, because he thought that someone had read his thoughts. It was Xu Tong. She noted that she had been before her, and did not understand what was so and so about her. 1:09. Afterward, the girl told Chen that she had a gift for him. She stayed up late to sketch a drawing. She added that if he threw it away, she would not forgive him. The protagonist was shocked, because this is the first gift from a girl in his entire life. The girl asked lovingly if he liked it. The protagonist looked at it. After that, he lowered his head and his face seemed sullen. He understood that all this was a bait to get caught in her spider nets. As soon as he spent a couple of thousand on her, she thought out in detail how to catch him. Unfortunately for her, he is not the same as before and smiled maliciously. The girl noted that he did not look particularly happy, and thought that he did not like the gift. The protagonist rudely asked her why he needed it. The girl was embarrassed and replied that she painted him late at night if he didn't like it. Immediately, the protagonist grabbed the drawing. After that, he got close to her and said, "What if this is not so? How will she respond to him for all the gifts that he gave her?" The girl was embarrassed. She called him a scoundrel and noted that he scared her and asked her to give the drawing. The protagonist laughed and said that he would not give it up and would take it away and keep it as a family heirloom. Then he took her hand and turned to her. He replied that of course he liked her more than her gift. The girl blushed deeply. She looked at him with loving eyes. The girl realized that he was not a bad flirt. Its location has increased by 5%. The protagonist smiled maliciously. He thought that she wanted to tease him and thought that he needed her only so that he would have more money. Immediately, someone shouted Zhu Liu's name and they show us their hand. The protagonist noticed this and got ready. A certain guy broke their pair and Sui and Chen were surprised. The bespectacled man asked if she had not agreed with her best friend to make nails and he was wondering who this guy was. 1:10. The guy thought that she was making nails with him, and now she's making out in front of everyone. He thought he had money and that's why she lets herself be hugged. He's been chasing her for so long and she's never even let him take her hand. The protagonist realized that, apparently, this boy is an ardent fan of Zhu Liu. This behavior is very familiar to him. The girl viciously asked who he was at all. Whether she has a boyfriend or not, he doesn't care. Immediately, the protagonist decided to approach that guy. The protagonist introduced himself to him and asked what his name was and how long he had been so humiliated. The girl didn't understand what was going on here at all. The guy replied that his name was Wang Yu. He was also from the Faculty of Arts. He had been trying to take care of Zhu Liu for 6 months. The protagonist exhaled and considered him a lost child. The protagonist raised his bangs and said that he reminded him of someone. He once ran after a girl for 3 years. He worked 4 jobs and 8 sunsets and steamed buns. And in the end, she still chose to get into someone else's expensive car. Wang felt that this was too much. The protagonist approached him and put his hand on his shoulder and said that those who throw them motivate them to become better. A real man will definitely have a decent woman. He told him to go back to the dorm and forget about Zhu. When he succeeds, she will definitely see it and regret her choice. Van started crying and saying that he had calmed him down so much. He will definitely become stronger and earn a lot of money. Zhu did not understand at all what was going on here and whether Wang Yu was really crying. After that, the girl turned to Chen. She assured that he was just her friend and never thought that he would interfere. The protagonist turned around and said he didn't care about her past, but he thinks that she does not respect either herself or him, and right in front of her face tore up the drawing. That card he gave me yesterday. He can continue to use it, but until she understands her surroundings and learns to communicate with people, it's better for them not to see each other, and he went ahead and scattered the pieces of the drawing. The protagonist was thinking, and how is he going to put up with such an attitude towards himself, and what will she do? He'll be looking forward to it. Damn, show the tears that fell on the floor. It was the first time someone had been so condescending to her. She recalled all the scenes with Chen that they had managed to go through together. The girl started crying because of this. She started wiping away her tears and realized that he really liked her, but she screwed up so much and howled. Zhu Liu's disposition increased by 5%. The protagonist walked down the street and went down the stairs. The protagonist, looking at the system window, realized that the worse he treats a woman, the more she loves him. He has grown as a person. We've finished with Zhu Liu. It's time to get down to Zhao Yuki. He picked up the phone and realized that Zhao Yuki was watching a live broadcast and didn't know if she was also a streamer or not. 1:11. He went to the broadcast and the girl greeted everyone and introduced herself. Her specialty is music and dance. She is still only learning and interacting with them on this platform, so she asked that subscribers take care of her. The protagonist thought it was very cute. He thought she only looked so cold, but was actually quite open. He looked at the number of viewers and decided that this was not enough, and that it would not go that way. Xiaomir immediately wrote to him, who wrote to the protagonist that he was back online and that she was glad to see him and sent emoticons. The protagonist asked who she was. The girl replied that he had just given her a bunch of rockets yesterday, and today he no longer remembers her. Chen laughed and said she was joking. He asked her if she had any free time, because he needed to meet her. The girl thought he was so impatient and replied that she was very busy. The protagonist told her to forget about it. The girl asked him not to be angry and added that today she would dance especially for him. The protagonist was angry, because he understood that she still wanted to breed him for money. He had spent so much money, but still there was not even a system notification of communication with her. It would be better if he gave all this money to Chairman Zhao. Immediately, he received a notification that the presenter he was following was participating in the battle, and needed to support her. Zhao Yuki versus the mysterious girl. Xiaofei realized that it was a battle, but hoped that she didn't mind some big shot. The protagonist was looking at Chairman Zhao and he had to look at it all. It was Xiaomir. She said that she accidentally called a new girl to the battle and thought that she had the victory in her pocket. The protagonist also felt that it was quite difficult to predict the winner here. These two are in a battle. Quite an interesting set of circumstances. The battle of Zhao Yuki against Xiaomir began. The blonde thought that she shouldn't even try. Her audience is much better than her. Moreover, she is supported by such an influential person as a lone wolf. The girl saw the messages of her sycophants and even recalled the correspondence with the protagonist. From her experience of catching big fish, he must already be on the hook. Xiao's followers started giving her many different gifts. Immediately the protagonist appeared, who presented the rocket. Xiaomir was glad that a lone wolf appeared and immediately thanked him. She saw that he had not bought the rocket for her and was just shocked. Chen bought a bunch of different missiles from Zhao Yuki, from which Xiaomir was simply shocked. He gave her 1,000 rockets. Zhao and Xiaofei were just in shock and their eyes were burning. The blonde began to get angry and wondered why they didn't give her rockets. Immediately she began to whisper and the guy held a sign with the inscription that the boss demands an explanation from her. 1:12. Immediately, the blonde apologized to everyone. She explained that she had things to do and she needed to run. Her subscribers remembered that this was the same lone wolf who had spent 10 million yesterday. She turned off the broadcast and the app reported that the steamer was resting. Jimmy I started laughing at her and saying it was a shame. Little Archie noted that the lone wolf is really incredible. Made her shut up. Liu Daneng added what she said, that he was her patron, and he immediately started another one. The protagonist thought that he could give gifts to her and others and asked if she had decided to play with him. He was looking at his phone and thinking. He wanted Chairman Zhao He to spend a lot of money and she should not disappoint him. Immediately, the sharks came running to the boss again and said that a terrible thing had happened. This rich lone wolf gave a lot of money again. The boss understood what was going on and was very surprised. He didn't know. This guy was definitely not some oil tycoon. After that, they show us the streamer's restroom again. The girls were discussing the protagonist. The girl with blue hair said that the richest lone wolf transferred 10 million to the girl who played the piano. The blonde thought that he was in a musical mood today. The redhead shouted to Xiao to carry her triangle and her. The other one shouted to capture her Sanu too. After that evening came and the streets were a little empty. Xiao told Zhao to watch, because her broadcast today is in the first place in all trends. She has become popular and will be an internet celebrity. Zhao, on the other hand, was just in shock and very embarrassed. She thought about it. To make men happy on the internet, she will not say that this is a particularly attractive prospect. Career is the most important thing for a woman. It should be independent both financially and in all other aspects. Xiao agreed with her and asked her not to teach her anymore. Immediately she asked her to tell honestly if she knew this rich man who showered her with gifts. The girl turned away and replied that he had told her 1,000 times that he had not. She may or may not believe. Her friend asked her not to be angry, because she was just very curious. But Zhao understood that he really sent too much and therefore he needed to thank her. Xiao looked at her with surprise. She thought about it, and who just said that he was not amused by such a prospect. Said one thing, did another. Immediately, Zhao screamed and Xiao was scared. She turned around and asked what it was. She turned to a friend and said that she probably knew who it was and showed the phone. She realized that it was Chen Yuan, because he was recorded in her contacts 1-1. The story
13. After Zhao tells that the son of a wealthy man, always the best clothes and the best food, but by nature he is quite modest, and therefore he always pretended to live a completely ordinary life. Having received a better education, he realized that he did not want to be the object of everyone's attention and wanted to live freely. One day he met a girl he fell in love with and decided to get her, no matter what it took, but as an ordinary person. Zhao believed that everything was like that, and the surprised Xiao thought that she had read the novels again. The girl added that he had been surrounded by all the best since childhood. Pretending to be a simple person must have been quite difficult. Her friend waved her hand and told her to go wash and sleep. The girl replied with a denial and that she should thank him from the bottom of her heart. After that, the protagonist's phone started ringing. The protagonist was drying himself after taking a shower and was surprised. It was a new notification from Zhao Yuki. She asked him if he would have any free time in the next few days. The protagonist replied that judging by these words, the chairman wanted to invite him on a date and assured that he could at any time. The girl would like to invite him to eat and asked what kind of cuisine he prefers. Chen replied that he wanted to go eat crayfish because it was his favorite delicacy. The girl was glad and agreed, adding that they would meet tomorrow at 4 o'clock at the school gates. The protagonist, wiping his head, was surprised because she didn't even ask where he had so much money from and just invited him to dinner. He wanted to see what she was up to. After that, they show us a busy street. The protagonist was riding a moped and singing a song under his nose. He slowed down near a luxury Audi car where a certain man was standing. He asked the protagonist if he was waiting for someone. Chen asked if he was waiting. The man replied that he was here to pick up his girlfriend. After that, we are shown Zhao, who looked around in surprise. The protagonist saw her and blushed a little. The man started telling him not to even think about her. To be with such a girl, you need a lot of money. Rather, he has a better chance. Chen was angry about it. Immediately Zhao saw the protagonist. She saw him as a handsome prince in a white suit and on a chic racing motorcycle. She thought he was a real handsome man and ran to him. The man continued to say that when he can afford to drive a car like his, the protagonist will have chances. Immediately, the girl sat down behind him and even Chen was surprised. The man was just in shock and even dropped his cigar. And the protagonist and Zhao went ahead. He looked at them and just didn't understand what was going on. He fell to the floor and started crying. After all, he has earned so much money, and what is all this for? 1-14. The girl imagined that she was riding a sports motorcycle. Chen was sitting in front of her in a chic suit, and she was in a wedding dress and rose petals were flying on them. She had loving eyes and she blushed a lot. Immediately, the protagonist told her that they were in place and the girl seemed to wake up. The girl got up from the moped and they drove up to the place where crayfish are sold. After they went inside, Chen warned that these dishes are quite spicy and you need to eat carefully. The girl sat down at the table, and the protagonist wiped the table a little, from which she was very surprised. Zhao blushed even more, because even in such an unremarkable institution, she does not forget about manners. A really decent man. There is one peculiarity in communication. The more he is disposed to a person, the more gracious he shows. He's really well-mannered. He gave her napkins and wanted her not to get her hands dirty, and the girl thanked him. Then he put on gloves and started eating crayfish. The girl thought that these must be the smallest crayfish he had ever eaten. She was thinking that he was so rich, but he was having dinner with her in such an unremarkable place. He just didn't want her to feel pressured. Zhao thought that he was really a beautiful, delicate flower. She imagined him in an expensive print suit and that he was eating big lobsters. Its location has grown by 10%. The protagonist did not understand what was going on at all and even dropped one cancer. After that, the girl pulled the cancer meat out of the shell. She held it out to him and asked him to say ah, and the protagonist was surprised. She thanked Chen and wanted him to let her peel a shrimp for him and handed it over. The protagonist was in maximum surprise. She started feeding him and immediately the protagonist's ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend Juan looked in there. She was very surprised. She even thought that she had problems with her eyesight because Zhao Yuki feeds Chen Yuan shrimp. She was angry and bit her fingers because first Su Liu, now Zhao Yuki, she did not understand what was wrong with him. She turned to Juan and said that there were too many people here and suggested that he go to another place. He realized that she meant her and replied that there were a lot of people she knew and the girl was very surprised, and he hugged her. They went ahead and Juan said that he likes to eat in crowded places. The protagonist has already finished his portion and a shadow appeared behind him. It was Huang. He dropped the paper and realized it was Chen Yuan. He said there were 500,000 here and asked him to vacate his seat and give it to him. 1:15. After that, they show us a table with shrimp and crayfish. The protagonist didn't know if he was crazy, because doing something like that doesn't make him more courageous. Juan asked if he didn't have enough money. He added that he thought it was enough for him to move. Immediately we are shown Zhao, who grabbed her purse and was very angry. The protagonist noticed that she was very angry and literally burning with fire. Chen understood that he was trying to provoke him, and did not understand why she was angry. Zhao cursed this cool guy who came out of nowhere and ruined her perfect date. Juan was surprised that he didn't have enough and then wanted to give more and reached for his wallet. Immediately, someone put his hands on the money. It was the waiter who asked if Juan could give him money, and he would put them a new table. Juan was very angry and grabbed the guy by the collar. He did not want a new table, namely the one at which the protagonist was sitting. Immediately Zhao hit him with her purse that he lost his tooth. The protagonist looked at her and Zhao lifted the bag over her head and said that she did not do it. Immediately, a huge woman appeared behind the protagonist and Zhao. She said Huang Zhengkai is a juvenile scumbag. He wears her clothes, eats her food and drives her car. So she also has fun with girls for her own money. This woman was very formidable and very angry that even the protagonist was scared and thought that she scared him to death. Huang with a bruise asked why Xiaoqing why she was here. The woman shouted that if she hadn't been here, she would never have found out that he was tumbling with another behind her back. She thought he was just an animal. Juan immediately approached her, made a cute face and said how could he be with other girls? Everything he has, it's all thanks to her, and therefore he can't betray her. Xu Tong was watching the whole scene. Wang grabbed Tong by the hair and shouted that it was all her. She decided that she could seduce him. He thought she was unscrupulous. The girl screamed in surprise. The girl started crying and said it was nonsense, because it's not like that. He was the one courting her and he said he didn't have a partner either. Wang hit Tong and told that lying girl to shut up. She fell to the floor and didn't know what to say. Juan was very angry and asked what she was looking at him. He assured her that it was all incredibly infuriating and wanted to hit her hard. Immediately, the protagonist grabbed his hand and he was surprised. Chen was angry and noted that he was hitting women and asked if he really wanted to embarrass himself like that. Lin Shutong's favorability increased by 20% and she thought that Chen Yuan still loved her. Its location grew incredibly fast and immediately the system reported that the location of the linked object number 2 Lin Shutong had reached 95 points. The counterattack was successful. Related object number 2 Lin Shutong spent 50,000 yuan. Cash back for the personal needs of the owner amounted to 5,000. Lin Shutong becomes a fan of the host. 20 gain points were received and a certain flash occurred and the protagonist was very surprised. 1:16. After that, we are shown the statistics and characteristics of Chen Yuan. His strength, 9 points. Physical characteristics, 9. Spiritual strength, 10. Dexterity, 9. Wisdom, 10. Gain points, 20. The protagonist was thinking about using 10 points on the physical characteristics attribute. Immediately he twisted Juan's arm. The blonde man began to shout that he was in pain and asked to let go. Juan grabbed one of the bottles. He raised it over his head and shouted that he decided to show off and that the protagonist died. Chen looked at him with cold eyes. He quickly hit the bottle, and then directly into Juan and he flew back. He was on his knees and Chen said that there was nothing wrong with being kept by a woman, but at the same time beating women is already bestiality. Huang was very angry because of the humiliation. He reached for his knife from his pocket. Zhao shouted to the protagonist to be careful. Juan was very angry and grabbed the knife and flew forward. Immediately there was a certain flash. The protagonist grabbed his arm and twisted it so that he dropped his knife. Immediately he decided to throw it over his back and lifted it above him. A strong blow thundered. Juan was lying on the floor and lost consciousness. All the people were shocked because they did not expect such an outcome. They got up from their desks to watch, but girls thought Chen was attractive. And the guys laughed that Wang got punched in the face. Shu Tong sat on the floor and looked at the protagonist, and Chen walked forward. Immediately she grabbed his leg and confessed that she was wrong. She asked him to give him another chance. She wanted to start all over again. The protagonist didn't even look at her, but listened. He asked her if it was the same Chen Yuan who dragged her 10 kilometers to the emergency room at 3 in the morning. Chen Yuan, who had been saving money for 6 months to buy her a mobile phone, which, by the way, she did not like, because it was not the latest model. The one who always knew how frivolous and vain she was, but believed that she would notice him. He was looking at her, but then he turned around and said that Chen Yuan had been dead for a long time and she had made her choice. And the girl continued to sit on the floor and cry. She was just in shock and understood who she had abandoned and what she had lost. After Zhao and Chen went outside and stood facing each other, the protagonist apologized to Chairman Zhao. Today everything is so chaotic that they did not have the opportunity to spend time together normally. The girl asked him not to call her that, just Kiki. She assured me that everything was fine today. Besides, she had a chance to see him from the other side. She thought that the further away, the more mysterious he seemed. The protagonist also said that next time he treats. She recalled all the events of today and believed that she had a premonition that he would still surprise her. And she also smiled maliciously. After that, they show us the night city. 1-17. After Shu Tong ran home and her friend met her, the girl was all in tears and the friend asked why she was without an umbrella because there was a terrible rain. She was crying a lot and wanted to tell me something about Chen Yuan. A friend suggested that she found out that he had given Zhao Yuki a whole million on the broadcast yesterday. She thought he didn't look like he had a lot of money. She also noted that Tun was soaked all over and asked why she did not stay to wait under some kind of awning. Tong was immediately surprised and screamed violently in rage. She asked who said it and if it was true. The girl replied that Zhao Yuki Xiaofai's neighbor had let it slip. This information then spread throughout the women's dormitory, and she found out. The girl was in shock. She began to sob even more and blush. She remembered Chen Yuan and only because of her money. She screamed a lot and some people thought it was a scream like from some horror movie. After that, the protagonist played on the phone and won. His friend thought that this simply could not be. 18 wins in a row and he thought Chen was on a roll today. The bespectacled man asked him to admit that the protagonist is as successful a sports player and all this time just didn't want to tell them. The protagonist could not have thought that after distributing 20 points of gain, even playing games would become easier, unexpected and pleasant. The protagonist told them that it was nonsense and that he was just lucky. Another friend asked why he shouldn't become a streamer. He'll pull them all up as soon as he starts earning millions. The protagonist told them to play, and he would go to the shower. After that, he looked in the mirror and realized that the effect of the gain points was really obvious. Just an incredible figure. He wondered if he would call himself an Asian Sirkin Balat. Then it would not be too loud to say something like that. Immediately he thought that Sirkin Balat was not so cool after all. He has a system. He felt that he now has a perfect body, and it is necessary not to be cheap with girls. Immediately, a friend shouted to Chen to get out of the toilet as soon as possible, because his phone was ringing and he was surprised. The protagonist came to him and was surprised that Zulil was calling him so late. He thought that she had come up with something else and would try to fool him again. He answered the phone and asked what he owed her. The girl cried and said that she didn't know what to do at all and he was surprised. After that, they show us a busy street. Then a huge pile of clothes. Zhu was sitting in her room and crying into the phone that she didn't know what to do at all. She asked him if he could lend her 500,000 yuan. 1-18. She said that her father is addicted to gambling and spends a lot of money that he got out of there literally in his underpants. They had a fairly well-off family, but in an instant they were at the bottom and they had to borrow money. The man was telling the guy to give him 2 more days and he would definitely return everything to him. She assured that she was not mercantile, but she just needed to pay off her debts. The protagonist also told her to give the card number. The girl was very surprised by his words. She quickly started dictating the card number to him. Immediately, she received a text message that 5 million yuan had been replenished to her bank account. The girl started counting zeros. She was very surprised when she saw 5 million in her account. The protagonist joked that he just made a mistake by 1 0. Immediately, the girl began to scream violently, which greatly surprised Chen. Zulil's disposition began to grow rapidly, so that a lot of system windows appeared in front of the protagonist and he was surprised. She told him that she would definitely repay him with something. After that, they show us that Zulil's disposition was already 94% and a little bit was missing. The protagonist was surprised and did not understand how. It's still not enough. He was thinking about whether it was worth acting directly. Immediately he realized that the one who first admits that he needs another person is in a vulnerable position. In other words, he loses. When 2 armies collide, energy decides. If the enemy does not dare to act, force him. The Art of War by Chen Yuan. After that, they show us the protagonist storm again and that the next day has come. The protagonist and his friends were standing near the men's dormitory. The protagonist told the bespectacled man that it couldn't go on like this anymore and he had to pick up a girl for himself. Immediately, someone called Chen Yuan. The protagonist turned back in surprise. Standing behind him was Shu Tong, who said that she had prepared lunch for him and offered to go to class together, handing him a bag of food. The guy shouted that he had whistled on the mountain or something. Why is Lin Shu Tong wearing his shoes? Immediately, another girl said that she had also prepared food for him. All three of his friends were just shocked and angry. It was Zhu Liu who suggested that he was probably tired of this table food. She made him porridge with sea products. Zhu and Shu Tong met eyes. They were very angry at each other and realized that now they are rivals. Immediately, a girl also turned to the protagonist. The protagonist wondered who else was there. The guys shouted in one voice that there was another girl, and wanted him to leave him at least one. 1:19. It was Zhao who looked just shocked and said that she had brought him beef noodles. Shu Tong wondered what Zhao Yuki was doing here. Both girls tensed. They saw a formidable opponent in front of them. They thought that this was the strength of the second beauty of the university. She has such an oppressive aura. The protagonist accepted her bag of food and asked how she knew that he liked beef noodles. The girl replied that yesterday, when they were eating crayfish, she realized that he liked spicy. She was glad that she knew where to cook great beef noodles. The protagonist said that he was very pleased to be taken care of and thanked Sitsi. He himself reflected that he did not expect anything less from Chairman Zhao. She is so attentive that she could understand what he likes. This is its advantage. The girl made a sly face and said that it was not worth it. Breakfast is the most important meal. Of course, you need to take into account the preferences of the person you are cooking for. And when you don't expect it, it's doubly pleasant, and Zhu and Tong were embarrassed. They imagined that she literally demolished them in the boxing ring with her words and actions. She also remembered that she had a gift and gave it to him. As a thank you, the protagonist was surprised, because this is a brand new iQOO 15 Pro Max. Chen was surprised that the chairman was giving him a gift, and even a phone of the newest model. The guys were shocked that she was also giving him gifts, and they thought that she simply couldn't stand it. Zhu and Tong were shocked, because it's more than 10,000 yuan. They didn't know she was so well off. She simply threw Zhu onto Tong's back through herself and thereby finished off. The protagonist replied that it was not worth the expense. The girl replied that he had spent more on her. She didn't have much money, but it was from the bottom of her heart. The protagonist realized that he had to accept the gift and they went for a walk. After that, they show us another hostel and a street. Shu Tong was sad, because she just wanted to go back to Chen Yuan and didn't know why it was so difficult. She was in despair, because only a couple of days had passed, and then Zhao Yuki showed up. After Zhu turned to her and told her whether it was Lin Shu Tong and added that they needed to talk. The girl paid attention to her. Immediately, she started yelling at her and saying that they had nothing to talk about. She thought she was an insidious woman. It's all because of her. Zhu replied that of course. She approached her and told her that they needed to unite. Tun didn't understand why she had come so close. She was surprised and asked what she was talking about at all. Zhu replied that they needed to unite to face a common enemy together, Zhao Yuki. 1:20. The protagonist was looking at his new phone and was surprised. He thought Zhao Yuki was really amazing. She gave him such an expensive phone, and it costs more than 10,000 yuan. He was looking straight at her while she was smiling. The girl turned around and asked in surprise what was wrong with the phone. The protagonist smiled and replied that he was incredibly cool. The system said that Zhao Yuki's infatuation is now 40%. He understood that if the level of favor was not so insignificant, he would even think that she was in love with him. Shen realized that she was really smart, and her methods were quite sophisticated. She lets the prey think that she is the hunter, like a little fish chasing the light to eat it, but it's a trap. The protagonist realized that he needed to find a way to accelerate progress. Immediately, a new message came to his phone. It was Xiao Mir. The girl wrote that they had not been able to arrange a meeting last time. She's just a little afraid of new acquaintances, but that doesn't mean she doesn't want to meet her at all. The protagonist was surprised, because she didn't even send him a couple of photos. She thought she had found a rich fool. Immediately he received a new notification. It was a certain dragon emperor. He greeted me and told me that he was one of Xiao Mir's sponsors. They had an interesting group where there were materials for all streamers and asked if he would like to join. The protagonist realized that this is the legendary chat. Immediately, Chen entered the chat pictures of interesting content and chatterbox. Immediately, everyone was surprised that the same lone wolf entered their chat. The protagonist greeted everyone. They were surprised that this is the same guy who threw the girls a few million in a couple of days. The protagonist replied that it was nonsense, and that he was having a little fun. Someone wrote that since this is nonsense for him, then the protagonist is definitely incredibly rich. He has a little business, and asked if he was interested. The protagonist thought that these rich guys wanted to test him and decided to play. The protagonist wrote that if you need help, you should write in private messages. The breeze wrote that he had a villa that he would like to live in and asked if he was interested in something like this. The protagonist asked where she was. The breeze replied that it was in the Jiang district with a view of the river. He typed the coordinates into the map and they show us that area. The protagonist was a little confused because this is a rich area. One villa will cost tens of millions. The protagonist wrote that he was just looking for something similar. You need to store all the junk somewhere. He assured me that he would look tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. The protagonist went straight to Zhao. After that, they show us a large and expensive house. The bald man was surprised that the protagonist was really interested and thought they were wrong. He told the Dragon Emperor that he was not a scammer and that he really had money. The Emperor replied that whether they exist or not, they will find out only with time. In any case, even if he is really rich, they will have a rich friend. They are both in the black. He also told Baldy to reset the location of the protagonist to him. A little later, he wanted to request his biography. After that, the protagonist walked with Zhao and on. The breeze wrote him the address of the villa, Jiang District, House 8. He put the phone away, looked ahead and thought how much her favor would increase if he gave her a villa. 1:21. After that, they show us the area of the rich. The protagonist and Zhao got out of the taxi and the girl asked in surprise why they were here. They show us the same big house where the bald man and the blonde stood. Immediately, a very unfaithful man greeted the protagonist and apologized that he had not sent a car for him. The protagonist replied that everything was fine. The bald man thought about it. Chen looked as ordinary as possible, but that girl behind him is so refined. He thought that Chen was the son of some rich family. He felt that it would be quite difficult for them to agree today. The bald man stretched out his hand and said that he himself was from Huanyuan. He had a small business, but recently, due to financial problems, he was thinking about selling this villa. He invited them to come inside. He wanted them to take a look. The building area is 500 square meters. The area used is 2,000. Design project of famous designers. All the furniture is imported from Italy. Going out on the balcony. He wanted them to just take a look, all according to Feng Shui. If it wasn't for money problems, he would have wanted to be buried here. Zhao was surprised that Chen Yuan was going to buy this house. All this splendor is worth tens of millions. The protagonist went out to his balcony and noted that the view was not bad. He also said that a man cannot strain so much and just say how much he wants for the house. The man decided to mention that he needed money quite urgently, and before him there were several other buyers who liked the villa very much. He is ready to give the house for 50 million, but it is necessary to leave an opportunity for bidding, so he overestimated a little. He said the average price was 60 million and blushed a little. The protagonist exhaled and the bald man thought, based on his reaction, that it was too expensive and that rich kids were not easy to fool. The protagonist replied that since there are only 60 million, he agrees. The man was surprised that he agreed so easily and simply. The blonde didn't understand what was going on. She didn't know if some people really thought it was cheap. The man was angry, because if he had known earlier, he would have said 70, no, not even 80 million. The protagonist asked Sitsi what she thought and whether it was worth buying. Zhao didn't understand why he was asking her, because she had nothing to do with it. The protagonist approached her and replied because he was buying it for her. The man was surprised that it was a gift for 60 million and realized that his wallet was just incredibly huge. The girl was shocked that he was giving her 60 million. She believed that no matter how rich he was, there must be some measure in all this. She thought it was too much 60 million. It's not 60 yuan. She suspected that this was some kind of trap and did not know what he would do with her later for such gifts. She imagined everyone and was very scared. 1:22. The girl replied that it was somehow not very good and she could not accept such a gift. He took her hand and asked her to listen to him. The protagonist explained that recently there have been certain restrictions on the part of the state, and there are too many real estate registered on it. He thought that one villa could be issued for her. Besides, he hoped to give her a house. The girl was just in shock and blushed deeply. The girl thought that it was possible to register real estate only in the name of a spouse. She didn't know if Chen Yuan felt that way about her. She imagined how they were already married and blushed deeply. He asked her what their relationship was. Her or his, he didn't feel the need to separate. Zhao Yuki's location increased by 10%. Immediately she turned away and her location increased by another 10%. It was growing very fast and its location was already 90%. The protagonist also believed that his acting abilities were getting better day by day, and Oscar was crying for him. After the girl poked her finger at the man, the blonde bulged her melons forward and asked the boss when he would give him one. The man started to worry and laughed. In fact, he thought he couldn't afford it. The protagonist held the card on the device. Chen said that a deposit of 10 million, the rest after signing the documents. The man agreed with him and said that he would do everything necessary. He would need a couple of days. Then they got into a taxi and drove off. The man said goodbye to him and wished him a good dog and assured him that he was glad to meet him. He noted that no matter how rich he is, he still takes a taxi, all in order to become like ordinary people. Indeed, the richer a person is, the more modest he is. He thought the protagonist was a great role model, and the blonde thought that he was still so young and wondered if he needed a secretary, and was already in love with him. Afterward, the protagonist and Kiki rode in a taxi on the way back. He noted that Xiao Yuki's location had already reached 90%. After she becomes his fan, the 70 million spent on her will turn into his personal 7 million. Another 10 million was spent on broadcasts. Combined with power-up points, this is a wonderful reward. The girl thought that from her experience of reading novels, he could say that the next step would be a declaration of love. She already had loving eyes. She thought Chen Yuan was so generous. She was sure he would be a good father. She imagined him giving her a diamond ring the size of a quail egg. She wanted a wedding ceremony in Milan or the Alps. She was thinking what they would call their child. And if they had grown old together, then he would still love her. She imagined it all and looked happy. Immediately they were told that they were on the spot and the girl came to her senses. He came to their college. The girl got out of the car, and the protagonist was still sitting inside. She asked him if he was coming. Chen replied that his roommates invited him to play in an internet cafe. The car left quickly and he only managed to say goodbye to her. The girl was surprised and did not understand where her declaration of love was. 1:23. After the taxi arrived where it was needed and the protagonist got out of it, he went inside and asked his friends how they were playing. The friend replied that he was late because they had already lost the game. He added that they lost because he wasn't here and old Zhu was just a noob. Zhu was surprised that he wanted to put all the blame on him. He told Chen to come through soon and that they had left this computer for him. The protagonist told them not to worry and added that Daddy would solve everything. He came up to the cash register and said that he had 20 cards, 4 packs of cigarettes and damn bottles of red tea. Zhu was also standing there, who was surprised when she saw the protagonist. Chen asked Zhu Liu what she was doing here. The girl was surprised that she didn't tell him, but her father has an internet cafe. This is one of them. Thanks to him, her family's debts were repaid. She wanted to treat Chen Yuan. She decided to make him a regular customer with no restrictions on visiting. The protagonist was confused and replied that it was not necessary. Immediately someone knocked down the door, from which the protagonist was very scared. We are shown a certain bandit with a bat who turned to Zhu and asked when her father would return the money to them. Zhu replied that she gave them 50,000 and they came to demand money again. The bandit came up to the table, hit him with a bat and replied that she had given 50,000 interest. 15 million have already run up. The girl shouted that it was blackmail and no longer climbs into any gate. The guy grabbed her and told her to stop showing her teeth here. If she's not going to give away 15 million, then she should go with him. She is a beauty and many customers will like her in his nightclub. He will work for a year or two and laughed a lot. The protagonist immediately flew up to them and grabbed the bandit by the hand and ordered him to get out before he finally got angry. Zhu was glad that Chen had become her savior. The bandit did not understand what he was saying there and ordered his henchmen to kill him. Gopnik immediately ran at him. The protagonist glared at everyone. He immediately kicked the main bandit. His friends saw all this and were shocked that he hit with a U-turn and did not understand when Chen learned this. It was like he was in a computer game. The guys understood that he was so strong, as if they were watching a frame from a movie in real life. No wonder they lost without him. After that, the main bandit was already bruised and said that Chen was lucky today, but next time he should not be seen. The other did not want to anger the protagonist and just wanted to run away rather. Immediately, Zhu hugged the protagonist and thanked him for saving her. She was so scared. Immediately, the system reported that Zhu Liu's location had reached 95%. Related object number 1 spent 5 million yuan, and Chen gets 530,000. Zhu Liu becomes a fan of the host, and he received 5 gain points. He was happy about it. He wanted to see where the power-up points could be spent this time. Immediately, we are shown Shu Tong, who noticed that Chen and Zhu were hugging. She shouted to Zhu Liu that she was lying trash, which surprised her. She pointed her finger at her and shouted that they had agreed to unite, and she was here seducing Chen Yuan. They began to swear among themselves and the protagonist told the system to spend all the points on dexterity. Immediately, the guys began to calm the girls down, while the protagonist just ran away from this fuss. 1:24. After that, they show us a large sports field where there were a lot of people. The protagonist understood that Lin Shutong and Zhu Liu had already finished. It remained to wait for Xiao Yuki. He wanted to find a new girl. Otherwise he would be left without fans. Immediately, someone tapped Chen on the back and apologized. She asked if he could step back a little, because the protagonist is blocking the way. It was a beautiful girl and she said that this sports ground belongs to their club. Now there will be short distance running competitions. He should just step aside a little. The protagonist was surprised. He found her a harsh, but very attractive girl. He held out his phone and said that of course he would leave if she gave him her WeChat. The girl was surprised. Immediately, someone shouted at them to stop and asked what they were doing there. A guy stood in front of her and assured her that he was her boyfriend, and he had better get rid of such thoughts as soon as possible and get out of here. The protagonist also thought that this guy looked familiar. He recalled how this guy had beaten the protagonist earlier and called him a worthless idiot and asked if Chen thought he was worthy of Sao Royo. He was constantly beating him up and beating him up. He also pressed his foot to the ground. This guy asked Chen if he saw himself in the mirror at all and told him not to even think. The protagonist got very angry and even tensed up. He thought that the world was small. The system was immediately activated. The girl's name is Yi Jiang. She is 19 years old. Attractiveness index 8.2. Location to the protagonist 5. The fourth object is successfully connected. As soon as the location in relation to the host reaches 95 points, the host will receive a cashback of 10% and 22 gain points. The protagonist laughed, because 22 points gain was already interesting for him. After the judge said that the competition would begin and therefore all participants should get ready. Her boyfriend got on the line and was ready. He looked straight at Jian and was all sparkling. The girl shouted that her boyfriend was the best. The bespectacled man next to me didn't understand why there was another person behind the track. The protagonist also wanted to participate in the races. Immediately, the judge pulled out a pistol and fired upwards. Everyone quickly ran forward and began to support the runners. This guy was ahead of everyone and he mocked his opponents. He thought that everyone was just useless insects. Immediately, the protagonist began to pick up speed and catch up with him. Someone overtook the guy and he was surprised. He thought it was impossible to run so fast. It was the protagonist who ran with a stony face. 1 minute 25. He was running at such a high speed that smoke and steam were flying away from him. The protagonist wanted Lai Yong to look carefully, because now he would lose to him in the field where he seemed to have no equal. Lai Yong started getting very angry. He shouted so that Chen wouldn't underestimate him. He removed a certain seal and used a golden left leg. He strained so much that the veins appeared on his leg. Lai Yong raised his head and said that he had no idea who he was and what he was. But now he decided to show him who the king and god were here. Immediately Lai Yong began to turn around and look for the protagonist. He did not understand where he had gone. The protagonist ran past him and told Lai to work better with his feet and not with his tongue. And he was scared when Chen ran past him at high speed. Lai Yong didn't understand how he had already overtaken him, because it had only been a couple of seconds. He was very angry that the protagonist was running forward. Chen thought that Lai Yong had devoted himself to hard training for several years, but he couldn't compare to the buns of his system. The presenter spoke into the microphone so that the audience would watch carefully. He believed that the protagonist was literally flying and did not understand what speed he had developed. Even their permanent champion could not withstand the onslaught. In just 50 seconds, he had covered the entire distance. The protagonist ran to the finish line and took down the ribbon. He Jing dropped her water bottle. She was shocked that Lai Yong lost for the first time in running. People started throwing up the protagonist and congratulating him. The presenter said that now they are watching the birth of a new champion. He broke all previous records. He didn't know if he should start doubting that he was even human. They know absolutely nothing about him. He was not even declared a participant in this competition. Immediately, a huge guy who was a coach approached the protagonist. He said that Chen had demonstrated such extraordinary abilities that it was impossible to imagine. He noted that if the protagonist is interested in developing in this field, he offers him to join the national athletics team. Lai Yong started crying and shouted to the coach that he should have told him, not Chen. The protagonist apologized and replied that he was not interested. He Jiang appeared, who noted that she hadn't even noticed how courageous the protagonist was. Its location has increased by 5%. Lai Yong immediately took the water bottle from her and asked what she was thinking about. The girl timidly replied that she was not talking about anything. She was just a little worried about him. Her disposition increased by another 10%, and the protagonist smiled maliciously. 1 minute 13. After Zhao tells 1 minute 26. After that, they show us the sorority house. Kiki was leaving and her friend asked where she was going. The girl realized that she did not know and told that Chen had given her a house. The friend started screaming and asked again. Kiki agreed, and so today they are going to look at the house together. She added that he bought it for 60 million. You need to look at real estate prices in the area. She also assured that if the old man who sells the house decides to back down, she will simply destroy it. Chen Yuan said that everything that belongs to him is hers. A friend thought that fools were lucky and she was jealous. She grabbed the phone and was just in shock. A friend told Kiki to stop bragging and look at the phone, and didn't even understand why she was jealous at all, and Kiki was surprised. The news has emerged that the protagonist is the main womanizer of Hunan University. The girls looked at each other and were very surprised, not even believing what they were seeing. At this time, the guy showed the protagonist the news and laughed. And Chen was angry about all this. He didn't understand what these things were. It was written that he was just a boy who liked to spend money, and Chen believed that this was slander. He thought that lately he has been popular for this reason, and someone does not like it, and he was wondering who it was. After we are shown a certain house and a bird. A group of guys were discussing the news and did not know whether they had published it or not. 3 guys were sitting at the computer. The bespectacled man said that this article was published and ranked first in the ranking, and this is the most popular news. The other guy started laughing because he thought Chen's reputation was pretty tarnished. He wanted to see who would like him now. Immediately, Lai Yong appeared behind them, who asked what they were doing here with the curtains closed in the middle of the day. All 3 of them were very scared. The fat man noted that they didn't hear anyone come in and scare them at all. The bespectacled man hastened to explain to Yang that recently a guy named Chen Yuan has been behaving very arrogantly, and therefore they want to teach him a lesson. Yang watched the news and realized that this was the guy who got in without an application and won the competition and that his name was Chen Yuan. He began to remember and wondered if this was the same loser he had beaten earlier. Immediately, an evil smile appeared on his face and he only said the name of the protagonist. Jan said that he knows him. They were together in high school. He's been such a sycophant since childhood. He knows a lot about him. He also noted that Lovelace is not very suitable for him. Rather, a sycophant who clings to girls with a death grip. Immediately, the fat man gave Jan a chair and asked him to sit down and talk. He also noted that it sounds intriguing. Molesting girls. A busy story can come out of this. Another asked Jan to speak more slowly, especially about sucking up. The bespectacled man grabbed the paper and said that he would write everything down and post it and laughed a lot. Then Yang smiled maliciously and thought that since Chen had won the competition and the coaches liked him, he would do everything to make sure that there was no wet spot left of his reputation. After that, the news on the site was updated and supplemented. There was information that the main womanizer and scumbag of Hunan University, Chen Yuan, he has connections with a huge number of girls, objectifies girls and does not shy away from using physical force against them. And the classmates were told to keep their eyes open, which is an even bigger sensation. The people who dealt with him confirmed that they were harassed by Chen Yuan and were forced to enter into a relationship with him under pressure. Such behavior cannot be called adequate. They also have information that during his high school years, Chen Yuan had a reputation for sucking up. He was stalking 100 girls and boys. All those who were subjected to such treatment had their academic performance and health deteriorated. All those who read it were just shocked and couldn't believe it. After that, we are shown a certain man who hit the phone hard with his hand and shouted that this was too much. It doesn't go through any gates. He will not allow such a thing to happen at his university. He will conduct a personal investigation and find out everything. If this is true, then he will kick Chen out of here. And his assistant was crying because he hit his phone and he just bought it. 1:27. After that, we are shown that Kiki tells us that Chen Yuan from Hunan University of Humanities is a special person. Most of all, he hates it when girls suffer. He comes from a wealthy family, but is a fair and selfless person who is always ready to help those in need. Chen said that he hates scum who beat women. Every day, at nightfall, he turns into a hero and punishes the villains. Powerful and mysterious, it protects a city full of desires and sin. Kiki said she thinks the protagonist is a real hero. We are shown 2 guards. One of them asked if she was exaggerating too much. Another asked on what grounds she came to this conclusion. The girl clearly replied that she thinks so at the expense of female intuition. The head did not know whether to believe her words. His assistant replied that she was the chairman of the Zhao Yuki Student Union. She's a little weird, but on the whole she has no reason to lie. He thought that Chen Yuan was probably a normal guy. The man wanted to interview other classmates. He just didn't believe it. He was angry because he believed that there was no one more perfect than him. After that, we are shown the university itself. They show us the protagonist's ex-girlfriend. 2 guards came up to her. They greeted her and said that they needed to ask her a couple of questions about her classmate Chen Yuan, and she should go with them. After that, we entered the building and were in the office. Tong Tong cried a lot and said that Chen Yuan was a good person. They just didn't suit each other. She loves money and has 7 Fridays for the week. Chen Yuan didn't choose her and she understands everything. She apologized for getting so emotional, but Chen Yuan is a really good person. When she thinks about him, her heart breaks. She also asked for another napkin. The guard handed her a napkin and asked her what she liked about Chen Yuan, but he rejected it. But she still thinks he's a good person. The girl replied that it served her right. She doesn't deserve it. He treated her so well, he never did anything wrong. He just doesn't love her anymore. The director was surprised and left the room sad. After that, he decided to smoke a little and exhaled. He stood at the window and wondered if he had made a mistake. Those people on the forum are just trying to slander a good person. He didn't know if Chen was really a good man. Then he saw a girl and a man and asked what kind of strike it was. The director came out to them and greeted the man. He said that he was the director of the university and asked what brought them here. Generosity, injustice, or the highest benefits. The girl said her name was Zulil from the Faculty of Arts. They are here to support Chen Yuan. The man added that a few days ago, the protagonist helped their family a lot. The director was shocked that Chen Yuan was also present here. 1:28. After that, the two went ahead and the director wondered if he had made a mistake about the protagonist again. He felt that he needed to take another look at the forum. The girl wrote that if Chen Yuan is a ladies' man, then she can rap one. After that, we are shown the news of how the protagonist won the cross, and he even gave water to the girls, which made them very happy. The first girl wrote that this Chen Yuan is very courageous and she fell in love. The second did not understand how such a man could be called names. This is already crossing all boundaries. A third wrote that even if they continued to call him that, she would not love him less. I really like his photos from the competition. The fourth wrote that the more successful a man is, the more envious he is. She believes that Chen Yuan is not to blame for anything. The latter noted that his smile was just like a ray of sunshine. The director was shocked that all these commentators were girls. He did not understand whether Chen Yuan was the idol of all girls or not. He remembered the past. It reminds him of something. He was the best among the best. The director in the past was very handsome and all the girls blushed next to him, and the guys were angry that this peacock was the center of attention. He also understood that if a person is too perfect, then he must be ready to receive for it. They constantly wrote nasty things on his desk for his beauty. The teacher said that he is a parasite and he refuses to teach him, and also calls his parents right now. The director cried because of his past and said that he understood Chen Yuan. He asked Chen to wait, because they would definitely get to the truth. Such humiliation and slander. He, the head of this university, would never allow such a thing to happen. After that, the director gathered all the students in the gym. The director greeted everyone and said that rumors had recently spread on the forum about one of the students of their university, Chen Yuan. He conducted his own investigation and found out that all this was just blatant slander. The protagonist was wearing a ribbon and was confused, and today they are gathered here to restore his good name. Chen Yuan leads a proper lifestyle, is a fair person, always ready to come to the rescue, and he never brags about it. The director cried with joy and added that the real pride of their university, a good-natured man. He wanted everyone to learn from Chen Yuan. Everyone will become useful to society. Immediately, all the students started cheering and clapping and wanted to learn from Brother Chen Yuan. The protagonist did not understand what was happening, why he was being given a certificate of honor at all. He was given it for socially valuable personality traits. Fair and equal treatment of people. He wondered what kind of help others were and where in general he was doing something like that. Lai Yong was very angry and just didn't understand. These forum posts were supposed to destroy him, but it turned out the other way around. He didn't know why. Out of anger, he bit his t-shirt and did not understand if the teachers and the principal were blind or what. He should be standing on the stage and getting a diploma, not him. Immediately, he noticed Jian, who was happy and noted that the protagonist was very good. Jian's disposition had increased by 10 points and he was looking directly at her. The girl also looked at him and blushed, and her location increased by another 10 points. 1:29. After that, they show us that sports complex again. After the award ceremony, the students were already packing up and slowly leaving. Yang asked Jing if she wanted to explain anything to him. He saw everything. She applauded Chen Yuan, almost squeaked there. He didn't understand what it all meant. The girl was surprised and asked if he was all right. What kind of unreasonable bouts of jealousy? She can't be admired by people who deserve it. The girl turned around and added that the protagonist was just a student, but had done so many good things. However, he didn't care about wealth and fame, and Lai Yong was angry and burning. Afterwards, she remembered Chen Yuan and how he had won. She added that when he walked around him, he could have stood there proudly and accepted congratulations. But he behaved so humanly correctly and patted him again and blushed, and Lai Yong became even more angry. He grabbed her hand and told her to shut up. Yang shouted that Chen had not bypassed him. This could not be. The girl was in pain. She almost started crying and asked Jan to let her go because she was in pain. Yang was very angry and said that Chen Yuan was just not capable of sucking up to anything. Well, the coach liked him, so what? He was looking at her with crazy eyes. He believed that money and status decide in society. His father can buy him a Tesla. He asked what this Chen Yuan has. The protagonist passed by them and called someone on the phone and asked him to stop by. He added that at the university he tries not to shine too much, and not to take an expensive car. Yang and Jing were surprised. A car arrived immediately. His friend came to see him and he was surprised that he came in an incredibly expensive car and asked him not to do it next time. The bald man agreed with him and replied that he would be more careful. He was in such a hurry that he completely forgot about his preference to be closer to ordinary mortals and assured that this would not happen again. He opened the door for him and asked him to take care of his head. And Jan was just in shock. The protagonist got into the car and drove away. The girl told Jan that since he did not trust her, it was better for them to break up. Yang was just in shock. He didn't believe what he saw and he didn't even hear Jan. The girl realized that he didn't care at all that she had abandoned him. After that, the protagonist arrived at a certain place. He took out his card and ran it over the machine. Immediately, the bald man received a notification that 50 million yuan had been credited to his account. The protagonist said that he had translated everything. The bald man replied that it was a pleasure to deal with him. When Chen left, he said that now they were even and he needed to go to university. The bald man wanted to give him a ride. The protagonist replied that it was not necessary. His car was too noticeable. He went on his own and the bald man wished him a good road. The protagonist was walking down the street and thought that the house had been bought. Now he needed to put the squeeze on Zhao Yuki, a little more favor, and 25 points of his attributes. The guy on the street was surprised when he saw Chen waving documents like a fan, and his girlfriend asked the guy to keep his voice down. Chen wondered what else he could give her and what he could offer. The protagonist went into a rich man's chat and the man wrote that the protagonist was just incredible. He helped him with a financial issue. Another asked if he had bought his villa and thought it was cool. Another one noted that it had only been a couple of days, but he had already bought it and noted that Chen really had a lot of money. The man decided to tell them more. Chen bought a villa and gave it to a girl. At that moment, he really felt like a beggar. He was surprised that the girl was given a gift of tens of millions and he is jealous. The protagonist, after reading all this, wrote that he was always happy to help. Immediately, everyone agreed with him and someone even bowed down. After that, someone asked him if he needed a car because he has his own channels. The protagonist realized that this was the right idea and he could give the girl a car. 1:30. After that, they show us an expensive car dealership where the protagonist arrived. The guy who texted him came forward, and the girls were standing behind him. His name is Zhang Haoshan. His family owns a small business, and he owns a car dealership. He is glad to meet him. The protagonist took his business card and examined it carefully. He recognized the Zhang Corporation, the largest on the market. They create the most expensive cars. They also buy them from the West and transport them to this country. The protagonist smiled because this company is the largest in the city. He figured that this guy was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. The protagonist noted that Zhang is so young, but already runs a car dealership. Zhang told him that he didn't need any pleasantries. He could just call him Brother Zhang and asked him to come by and show him the car. As for the age, he added that when he first heard about the protagonist, he imagined a pretty grown man. He added that he is not only so young, but also charismatic. The girl, looking at him, was surprised because director Zhang personally accompanies him and did not understand who he was. Another thought that Chen was the son of some rich man. She told her to stop staring because this is not a bird of their flight. Zhang said that he would not like to brag, but in this city his showroom has the best premium cars. The protagonist walked and looked around. He said that Chen would find absolutely any car here. The protagonist said that he wants Bugatti Chiron. Zhang looked at her and was very surprised. Chen laughed and asked if he had such a car. Zhang remembered about this car and was surprised. He thought that the protagonist was a joker, the most luxurious car produced in a limited edition and standing like an entire city. The protagonist realized that he did not have such a car. Chen asked about the Lamborghini Veneno and the Pagani Probe, but none of that happened. Zhang was shocked and thought that the protagonist had come to mock him. Zhang said that in their salon he could buy a car worth from $2 to $8 million. The protagonist realized that he did not have these cars either. He turned back and noted that he didn't have anything useful, and that he didn't have a particularly developed business. Zhang got angry and smiled maliciously, considering that he was able to purchase a house worth several tens of millions. But he does not believe that he can afford such cars. It's time to use his treasure. He turned and walked back to the secret car. Zhang approached her and took her by the sheet and said that he really would not find the cars he named here, but he would show him the most expensive car in their showroom. He threw off the sheet and shouted, "Go ahead, LaFerrari." This is a Ferrari LaFerrari. The engine capacity of the Ferrari LaFerrari is 6.3 liters. The engine power is 800 horsepower. Acceleration from a standstill to 100 kilometers takes 3 seconds for different generation. The maximum speed of this car is 350 kilometers per hour. It costs 22.5 million. Zhang was very worried and asked what he would say. The protagonist thought about it, because a Ferrari is not very expensive, but it is not cheap either. It will go as a gift for Zhao Yuki. He put his hand on his shoulder and told him that it was just over 20 million. He appreciates his efforts and will pay with a card. He also said that they drove this car to the #1 house in Jiang district. He handed him the card and Zhang agreed with him in a shocked state. Immediately, his phone started vibrating. He took it and realized that Liu Wenj was calling him. He wondered why he was calling him. Chen answered the phone and Liu shouted that his girlfriend had cheated on him and he was just in shock. 1:31. Liu said that it happened on his birthday. His girlfriend Liu Jia went to her friends to get a manicure, and by nightfall she was still gone. She didn't have an umbrella with her and he was very worried about her. As a result, he was just shocked that his umbrella fell to the ground. He witnessed a scene that broke his heart. At that moment, a clear picture appeared in his mind. The two of them kiss in the rain, but he is the drenched rat at this moment. He's in a lot of pain. They've been in a relationship for 3 years. He was about to introduce her to her parents. Liu cried a lot and drank a lot. The protagonist asked if he could stop drinking, because he was already drinking his 8th bottle. Liu asked his friend not to worry, because he just wants to get drunk and die. He asked a friend what he had done wrong and suggested that it was not too late to bring her back. Chen got angry and grabbed his friend by the collar, which shocked him. He shouted for Liu to come to his senses. It was her fault, not him. He asked where his pride was and that he was not a mumbler. His friend understood him and stepped forward. He fell on his knees and said that he understood everything, but he couldn't. The protagonist interrupted him and asked if he couldn't just put up with it. Does she think it was a mistake and she's actually not a bad person? Liu agreed. The protagonist realized that he should teach him a lesson and began to dial a number. Liu asked who he was calling. The protagonist hesitantly replied that Wen should just trust him, because he would arrange everything. The protagonist smiled maliciously and added that Liu Jia would crawl to him on his knees. The protagonist called Huoshan and said that he would like to take a couple of cars, not very expensive, about several million, and for him to contact reliable people who could be driving tomorrow. Liu was shocked that Chen had asked for cars for several million. Huoshan replied that he would do everything without problems. Everything would be at its best. Liu Huoshan was surprised and did not understand what these two personalities were when the protagonist took out the second phone. He called Liu and asked if she had a minute, because he would like to meet. Liu felt that Chen had been replaced in the blink of an eye, and the protagonist had already agreed and was waiting for her. After that, they show us a busy street, and that evening has already come. Liu ran to the protagonist and hugged him, while saying that she missed him, and Liu was just stunned. They all sat down at the table and ordered food. Liu poured water for the protagonist and he thanked her. Liu noted for himself that just one call and the girl for 8 points immediately flew here. He didn't understand what had happened to the sycophant Chen Yu and he knew. It actually looks like this. It's like she's sucking up to him. The protagonist introduced his good friend Liu Wenj to Liu and he greeted her shyly. Liu asked if he had called her so late just to introduce her to his friend. The girl thought about it, because Chen Yuan introduces her to his close friend, which means he likes her. The protagonist replied in denial. He just wants her to help them tomorrow. 1:32. After that, we are shown an expensive white car that was flying forward. Liu's ex-girlfriend, Liu Jia, was sitting inside. Her boyfriend told her not to even think about Liu. She would never be happy with that simpleton Liu Wenj. In a couple of days, because it's her birthday, he will give her a designer handbag. The girl agreed, but they had been in a relationship for such a long time. She noted that Ma should be more empathetic. Immediately, we are shown a Ferrari that overtook Ma's car. He quickly walked around him and stood in front of him. Ma shouted, "But how does he drive?" and abruptly hit the brake and swerved sideways. The car stopped quickly and pulled over to the side of the road. Ma climbed out of the window and shouted that the bastard had bought a license and couldn't drive. Immediately, he was very surprised and blushed. We are shown Liu, who was slowly getting out of the car and was wearing an incredible dress. She was so beautiful that Ma just fell in love with her and his nose started bleeding, and he even forgot what he was talking about before. Immediately, someone else got out of the car. It was Liu, who was wearing a gorgeous fur coat and looked very brutal. Liu Jia was shocked when she saw him. Liu hugged Liu and said she was scared. He just gave her a new car, and this fool almost scratched it. Liu was very afraid and his hands were shaking. He replied in embarrassment that if this had happened, it was okay, he would have just bought her a new one and that was it. Ma did not understand what was wrong with Liu Wenj. Why he looks like this and did not understand. Did he hide all this time that he had rich ancestors? Liu looked at Liu and was surprised. She got angry and asked Liu about this performance. Liu replied that no one needed her and that Liu should get into the car. Liu became even more angry and replied that she had known him for so many years and she was aware of how things were going in his family. Yes, she cheated on him, which was wrong, but today's performance, just disgusting to her. The protagonist was sitting in the car with Huoshan, and he noted that this woman had figured them out. The protagonist replied that there was nothing wrong. They just have to keep going. The most interesting things are waiting for them. After that, we are shown that a bunch of expensive cars were driving along the road. A moment later, a lot of cars stopped near them, which shocked Ma. Bai got out of the car and noted that Wenj was also here, and Ma was shocked by these rich people. Bai already had a lot of friends around and he asked Ma if he knew who he was. Ma replied with embarrassment that his name was Bai. He hugged Liao and Ma and asked the girl what he had told her, that his name is Ma Kai. His family owns coal deposits and he studied in America. He began to rub his head and Bai noted that this Ma Kai is an ordinary liar who pretends to be rich in order to get beautiful girls into bed. He asked if she really thought he was richer and laughed. And Ma asked Bai to let him go. After that, Bai left and added that his methods were as old as the world. Who would have thought that anyone would fall for them at all, and laughed again. He also told her to just look at herself, because she was not worthy of even the poorest person, and laughed again. And Liao Jia was just in shock, and it was as if she had been struck by lightning. 1-33. The girl began to get very angry and grabbed the heel and shouted that he was a brat, wanted to deceive her, and therefore she wanted to kill him. Ma was running away and asked, well, which one of them is without sin? Liu looked at this picture with sad eyes. After that, he turned around and told Liu to leave, and she agreed. Immediately he was surprised, and Liu asked why he suddenly stopped. He looked back and saw Liao Jia crying and begging Liu not to leave her. She's not vain at all, it's just that she comes from a poor family. She begged him to give her another chance. Liu went ahead and asked her not to touch him, and she was just in shock. He added that from today they are cutting off any ties. Don't write or call him anymore. Ma wanted to run away quietly at this time. Bai was walking forward with friends, and his friend noted that Bai, as always, does not go into his pocket for a word. Others pointed out that she was a poor little girl. Bai replied that he should go and calm her down. Immediately, Ma hit the protagonist, and Chen asked where he was going and if he wanted to get away. The protagonist replied that he would not leave here just like that. He thinks 100 slaps will be enough, but Ma was very afraid, and all the friends started raising Ma. After that, time passed and I showed us a nightclub where there were a lot of people. All the guys were there and drinking. Someone said that they were incredibly lucky to meet a man like Mr. Lone Wolf. That's exactly the nickname of the protagonist. Chen wants to thank everyone for their help. The guy replied that Huoshin's friends were their friends. Bai turned to the protagonist and said that he had heard about his activities on the shark streaming platform. He wanted to ask him for a little help. The protagonist was surprised and asked what he was talking about. Bai's friends looked at each other and were surprised. Bai confusedly said that there was one streamer, which he would really like to support, but this month the budget will not allow it. He doesn't know if Chen can help him. The protagonist thought that this song was good, and that he should start over. These rich kids look down on everyone. Huoshin told the protagonist not to listen to him, because Bai was just joking. Huoshin asked Xiao Bai if he was completely crazy. Why would Chen support her? Because this is too much. The protagonist loudly slammed his glass on the table. All the friends were surprised and realized that he was angry and that something was going to happen now. The protagonist unlocked the phone and said that let it be as a gift. He rolled the phone on a chair and said he would go to the toilet, and he could play a little. He went ahead and added that he might not save, and his friends didn't understand what else it was. Bai took the phone and was surprised that he could spend as much as he wanted. He trusts him so much. He pressed the rocket and figured that he really could not be petty. 1-34. The protagonist went ahead and noted that it would be much worse if they forced him to pay the bill. And he doesn't even worry about this, the system pays anyway. The protagonist got up to do things, and there was a huge guy next to him who looked at the protagonist's device. He was just in shock and screamed. He considered that the protagonist has a real dragon in size, and he himself has a small chick. Shen didn't understand what he was doing, but this huge guy was showing him a sign of respect. All the guys were around him and told Bai to send 2,000 more missiles, and even 3,000 more. They looked at it with lust and wanted him to push even more. The protagonist passed by them and asked why they were gathered here in a circle. Bai started crying and was glad that he finally came and asked Chen to save them. The protagonist took the phone and said that he had been gone for quite a long time, and they managed to spend only 20 million. The friends were shocked. They did not understand who this Chen was. They thought his family was richer than the Bank of Hell. Bai noted that at one time he spent a maximum of several tens of thousands, at most a little over 10 million. When he thinks about how many sports cars he could buy with this money. The protagonist replied that 20 million didn't sound very good and that's why he wanted to finish it off to 60. But Bai was shocked and shouted. He grabbed his arm and asked him to stop, because that's enough. She really doesn't cost that much, and I thought Chen was just incredible. Huoshin hugged his friend and asked if he would admit failure. Such people need to be respected, and not to arrange all sorts of checks for them. Today he was convinced of this. Bai took a glass of booze and asked the protagonist to forgive him for his rudeness. He learned a good lesson today. From now on, he has it at his disposal. A friend asked if 1 glass would be enough. 3 glasses would be better. Another asked which 3 glasses. 3 bottles were needed. Another friend asked if they were going to get drunk to death. All these girls were watching and the brown-haired woman asked who this guy was. He has a lot of influence. The white-haired one who just said the toast is Bai Killen from the Bai Real Estate Agency. The blonde noted that this is a party of rich kids from the cream of society. If you hang out with them, you can never worry about money again. The guy next to them asked if this was the lone wolf, the mysterious rich man who spent 10 million on a streamer. He dreams of being one. They immediately wrote something to the protagonist. He noticed it and was surprised. Chen told them to rest, but he had urgent business and therefore he wanted to see them next time. One friend asked that he had run away in a hurry and thought that Chen was afraid that he would be charged. The blonde man asked if he thought Chen couldn't afford to pay for a couple of bottles of booze. His annual income is Chen's pocket money. If he continues to test his patience, he will not vouch for himself. The protagonist had already sat down on the street and Xiaomir wrote to him. She wrote that she had returned to the city and would not wait to meet him. The protagonist replied to her that if so, they would meet tomorrow, and Xiao agreed and was delighted. The protagonist felt that after such an expectation, it was time to drown in favor points. After that, I show us the plane on which the girl arrived. Xiaomir thought that this was just an ordinary date, a little feminine charm and everything would work out. She thought this rich kid should be his goldfish. 1:35. After we are shown that Chen was texted by his ex-girlfriend Lin Shutong, she suggested that he start all over again. She had such a good dream yesterday. They were married, lived together in their villa. He went to work every day, and she and 6 babysitters looked after their child. Every weekend they went shopping with him. He bought her so many bags that she didn't even have enough room to store them. He took her to Paris to drink red wine and to Iceland to enjoy the northern lights. She woke up and realized that there was neither a bag, nor a polar blue one, nor his. She knows she hurt him, but she didn't mean it. Huang Junkai deceived her and only now does she realize that she needed him all this time. She would be a good girl in the future. She asked him to forgive her. It was a mistake that every man is forgiven for. Xiaomir asked the protagonist what he was watching there. The protagonist decided to delete the dialogue with the girl. Chen replied that it was nothing. It was just that someone would not calm down, and the girl was surprised. He smiled at her and asked her what she had just said. She recalled how her boss shouted that even a dozen of her most devoted fans would not cover the amount he had paid her. She should do anything, even jump into bed with him, but she should have him on the hook. She was angry because there was such a beauty in front of him, and he allowed himself to be distracted. She doesn't believe that she won't succeed. She said that Chen is so young, but already so rich. She thought he must be in a high position. We are shown the characteristics of the girl, as well as her attractiveness index, 7.8 points. The location was 60 points. The system reported that this was too high and it was impossible for her to contact him. The protagonist began to get angry about this, and felt that he had wasted all the money. He felt that he would have to lower the favorability level first. The protagonist, picking his nose with his finger, replied that he did not hold a high position, but was just a homeless man with no education. The girl was surprised that he did not have a job and thought that he had his own business. Otherwise, she did not understand where he got such funds. The protagonist replied that he was just spending his father's money. Now the company has gone bankrupt and they owe the bank several million. In fact, he met with her to ask her to return some of the money that he sent her and grabbed her hands, and the girl screamed because he picked his nose and then took hold of her. Her disposition began to decline rapidly and she asked if he didn't have money. Then why was he acting like he had it? I wanted to show off on her stream and she shouted that she had had enough. She was surprised at his words and asked if he was a man or who. It was just terrible. Xiaomir's disposition dropped to 0. She took the phone and added that she was also a fool, only wasting her time here with him. She called Lana and said she was at the airport cafe. She asked him to take her away from here as soon as possible, because she is being chased by some strange guy and she is very scared. The protagonist felt that he had met money-hungry women before, but he still had to look for such a manipulator. Later, time passed and they even show us that the plane on which Xiaomir arrived flew away. Lan flew into the establishment from 2 legs and asked who dared to touch his woman in broad daylight. Now he's going to punish the scoundrel. He was walking straight at the girl and Xiaomir noticed him. She was very happy and ran at him saying that she was very scared, because this pervert was grabbing her hand. Lan walked past her, which shocked her. He greeted the protagonist and asked why he was here, and was glad to see them, and Chen was surprised. 1:36. Lan said it was him. They were drinking with Brother Bai yesterday. The protagonist realized that it was Xiao Lan and said that he remembered him. Lan was very sorry that they didn't manage to have a couple more drinks yesterday. Who would have thought that they would meet like this? Today he's treating, and he can't refuse, and Xiaomir was surprised. Xiao didn't understand why he was fawning over him so much. Lan Zong is one of the representatives of the elite. If they talk about the golden youth of Seoul, his family owns industrial enterprises all over the city. She imagined that Lan was swimming in money and sitting on a golden throne. She was very surprised and said Lana's name. Xiao Lan himself got angry and told her to shut up, because Chen is a good friend of his close friend. He has so much money, more than all of them combined. The girl was surprised by the amount, which she could not even imagine. She felt that he had been testing her all this time to see how sincere she was. Would she really miss this opportunity? Immediately, she changed her look and felt that she needed to rehabilitate herself. She apologized for her rudeness to the protagonist and admitted that she was wrong, and asked if he forgives. The system reported that Zhu Yihan is successfully connected to the system. He should counterattack and get 25 gain points. The protagonist only looked at her because of the system. He agreed, because she is still young, and therefore very stupid. It was just a joke and asked her to relax. Xiaomir was delighted and thanked him, calling him the best. Her disposition quickly grew up again. The protagonist smiled and thought that she was a streamer for a reason. As long as the opponent had money, favor would flow like a river. Unfortunately for her, he would not let her go so easily. Xiao Lan got angry and said that he had spent 10 million on her, and she invited him to such a diner. He told the protagonist that their meeting was not accidental, and then he treats them. He knows one restaurant that might suit his taste. The protagonist agreed with him. How can he refuse him? The protagonist got into the car and Lan asked him to sit down carefully. Xiaomir shouted at them to wait, because she was going with them. After that, we are shown that the car went at high speed. Xiaomir sat next to him and moved closer and closer to him. Then she approached him and hugged his hand. She asked him if he was more angry, because she was really wrong. The protagonist replied that everything was fine and he wasn't angry. The girl noticed that he was going to enter the shark and did not understand what he wanted to do. Shen went to a streamer and the girl told him not to forget to subscribe. Xiaomir was surprised and hoped that he wasn't going to send her money. He immediately began to click on the missiles insanely quickly and send them to her, from which Mir was simply shocked. 1:37. He was sending missiles to her very quickly at an incredible speed. A moment later, he had already sent her 3,000 missiles, which made the girl very surprised. She even lost consciousness. Immediately, other workers ran up to her and shouted for doctors to be called as soon as possible, because Own had never seen so much money in her life. Xiaomir was surprised by his speed and saw something like this for the first time. Even if others can poke so fast too, they just don't have that much money. The girl screamed, because if she hadn't screwed up earlier, these 30 million would have been hers. She felt that this Chen was just bullying her, but she thought he was very handsome when he spent money. Her disposition increased by 30 points, if only to imagine that his fingers are not tapping on the phone screen, and they slide over her body. Her disposition increased by another 30 points. The protagonist looked at her and did not understand what was wrong with her. Her disposition grows when she spends money on others and is surprised. After that, Lan said that they were finally in place. This is the best private restaurant in Seoul, Black Pearl. Only certain circles can eat here, and therefore everything is confidential here. 3 features make this restaurant the best. The protagonist was surprised and noted that the outstanding dishes, picturesque landscapes, and what else? Lan replied that Chen had seen enough. He guessed correctly about the first 2, but here's the third one. They show us Yuki, who was sitting in the gazebo. Lan replied that the third was the boss's daughter, Zhao Yuki. Immediately, the girl paid attention to the protagonist and was surprised. The protagonist was also surprised when he noticed Chairman Zhao. The girl turned her gaze to something else. She saw that Xiaomir was hugging the protagonist. Her disposition dropped by 5 points and she got very angry and broke her musical instrument, which shocked all 3 of them. She looked back and even started crying. The girl began to run away, and the protagonist was upset because he had very little left and it would be possible to get gain points. The protagonist decided to run after her and did not know if he would ruin everything at a critical moment. They both ran around the corner. The protagonist caught the girl and stood in front of her. Yuki shouted that he was terrible. He was just playing with her feelings and she was asking him to let her go. The protagonist thought that if this continues, he will lose all points of affection. This will not work. He felt it was necessary to take a chance. He asked Chairman Zhao if she knew about the very first rich man. The girl shouted that they were talking about his betrayal now, and not about some movie. Chen said he was the rich man. He took a lighter and lit a cigarette, which surprised her. He noted that she must know that he was not from a simple family, and he asked her if she had ever wondered why he was content with such an ordinary life. There is an unspoken rule in his family, according to which the heir, upon reaching the age of 18, must spend 1 billion yuan in a month in order to inherit all 50. Therefore, he diligently spends money and invites everyone to invest in their project, investments, charity, various environmental initiatives. He had already come up with a plan to migrate the polar glaciers so that ships would not crash into them. And this girl is the streamer he fucked. All this is just because he has to play this game. He approached her and took her hand and assured her that no one else was aware of the case. He doesn't expect her to understand. It's just that this mystery has been weighing on him for so long. He walked away from her and assured her that he was just tired. Yuki thought she was so stupid. He's trying so hard, and all in order to become the heir. And she doubted him. Because of this realization, she began to cry. She watched as the protagonist walked away from her. Immediately, she ran up to him and hugged him from behind, shouting that she did not want to part with him. She asked him not to leave because she was wrong. The protagonist accepted her words and took her hand. She also understood that he had even opened up to her on such a delicate matter as family matters. She thought he really loved her. Her disposition has increased by 20 points and has already reached 92 points in total. After that, they show us again the posh restaurant where they arrived. The protagonist and Zhao went out together and the girl apologized. She was a little out of her mind. Chen Yuan's friends are her friends and she treats them. Lan was surprised, because only 5 minutes in such a change of mood, he thought that Chen was incredibly cool. Xiaomir was upset and angry. She didn't understand what she was making of herself and she would still see who would get the protagonist. They all sat down at the table and the girls looked at him. Lan noted that the two beauties were around Nai Chen and he didn't know if he could handle it. Xiaomir noted that Chen had not yet introduced this girl to her and she asked who she was. Yuki Zhao laughed that Xiaomir referred to him by his nickname Lone Wolf. The girl added that he didn't even tell her his real name, but she calls him brother. She's betting that Chen is younger than her. Lan imagined this fight as a confrontation between a phoenix and a crane. He felt an incredible power. It's not just not an equal fight, it's a real beating. 1:39. Zhao Yuki looked like a real phoenix goddess. Liao Zir understood this and was therefore very angry. Immediately, food was brought to them and the protagonist tapped his chopsticks on the plate. He asked them to calm down, because it was time to eat, and he was already hungry. The girls glared at each other. Immediately, they turned away in silence and clicked. Lan was surprised that they wouldn't even swear and thought that the methods were, of course, terrifying. One of the most popular shark streamers, a real thunderstorm of wallets, another famous beauty of the city with high origins. Lan thought that Chen must have some kind of special charm technique. He considered him a real tempting demon. He used to be impressed solely by his wealth, but now he has become his spiritual idol. He shouted that he wanted to be as cool as him, and the protagonist was surprised. After that, evening had already come and the protagonist was in the university courtyard. He noted that this restaurant was not cheap, but he was glad that he didn't have to pay. Speaking of money, he decided to look at his progress. There are 80,000 in total. We remove 0 and we get 8,000. Lan did not understand what kind of machinations they were. He successfully certified past contracts with the girls. We are shown that Zhao Yuki's disposition was 91, completion reward, 25 gain points and piano playing skill. Xiaomir's disposition is 92, completion reward, 25 gain points and dancing skill. The protagonist understood that the level of affection of these two was already quite high. It must be that progress would be tremendous. Immediately, the protagonist noticed another girl and was surprised. He didn't even realize when she had just made it. It was Yi Zhiling. The protagonist remembered her. It was Lai Yong's girlfriend. Her disposition was already 76, completion reward, 22 gain points and dancing skill. He remembers for sure that he was 25 years old. A few days have passed and now he sees such a figure. Was he really that attractive in her eyes? Right there, two guys ran by the protagonist and laughed. The first one said that he had heard someone confessing their love downstairs, and the fat man laughed and thought it was a knight on a white horse. The protagonist overheard all this. When I heard the words about the knight on the white horse, I thought it was interesting. Someone near the door made a heart shape out of candles and sang a song. He apologized for hurting her. He didn't want to see her cry. He had always loved only her. The guy on the guitar continued to sing and play until a lot of people had already gathered around him. It was Lai Yong. He held out a bouquet of flowers and noted that he was mistaken. He shouldn't have been so cold to her. He asked her to remember how good they were together and asked her to give him a chance. Everyone in the background wanted her to forgive him. Yi Zhiling was angry about all this, as people suggested to her. The protagonist came and saw Lai Yong. He thought it all looked so awkward, and did not understand what kind of cheap performance it was. Immediately, he noticed the protagonist and was delighted. 1:40. The girl threw back the bouquet of the protagonist. She didn't care about Yong and ran to Chen. He started crying and shouting the girl's name. He didn't understand where she was going, because he was here. She stood in front of the protagonist and asked if his name was Chen Yuan. She finally met him again. She noted that she was incredibly lucky today, which surprised Chen. Jiwen handed over the phone and asked him to add her to the chat. She asked me to just add a contact and not refuse her. People were surprised and didn't understand what was going on here. They didn't understand if she had another man. Here it is, pure and sincere love. Jan was in a lot of pain and as a man he lost. He was very angry and did not understand what was wrong with this Chen Yuan. He won't put up with it. He will remember this Yi Zhiling. The protagonist looked at Jan and understood everything. Chen approached him and noted that now he was thinking that he would never come to terms with what had happened. He could not understand how. and it is believed that He Jiwing has 7 Fridays in practice. Jan did not understand what all this meant and thought that he was also trying to mock him. The protagonist replied that he was actually jealous of him. He is handsome and well-built physically. He easily won the hearts of women. He really deserves their attention. But as soon as he realized that he was no longer the center of attention, he got lost. Winning was what was important to him. But he stubbornly ignored the feelings of his soulmate, which made He Jiwing very sad. He pushed her away himself, and then she cried. And now he's making that pathetic appearance again. He asked if he didn't think he was just being ridiculous. He was surprised by his words. Immediately, he realized that Chen was right and he had brought this upon himself. The girls split into 2 camps. Some were angry that he cheated on him, while others replied that he ignored her himself. Some people thought that when they were together, he didn't pay enough attention to her, so he actually wants to now. It was as if He Jiwing had been struck by lightning. She blushed because she realized that Chen understood her. Its location has grown to 91 points. Yuki's friend saw Chen Yuan and did not understand what kind of relationship they were in with He Jiwing. She got angry and said she needed to go back and tell Kiki everything. After that, they show us the women's dorm again, and the lights were on in one room. Immediately, Xiao Fei flew into the room and shouted at Yuki that Chen was cheating on her, and Zhao even screamed out of fright when she was making a face mask for herself. 1:41. Yuki asked Xiao Fei to stop saying that, because Chen Yuan is not capable of such a thing. A friend told him that a girl had just confessed her feelings to him downstairs. They stood there and made eyes at each other. The girl turned around and told Xiao that Chen couldn't control other people's feelings, and the words don't mean anything. Xiao Fei was surprised by her words. She pointed at the phone and asked Yuki how she would explain it. The protagonist spent fabulous money on other girls. Yuki understood her and said that they had talked about it. In fact, he spent much more than that miserable 30 million. Xiao Fei asked. He said he was transferring money to other streamers. Yuki agreed and said that their relationship is based on trust. He believes her and she believes him. Is it strange? It's not a big deal. Xiao Fei doesn't have a partner, so it's hard for her to understand what kind of spiritual connection she's talking about. Xiao Fei was surprised by her words and felt like a knife went through her heart. Yuki left her singing a song, and Xiao noted that she was so good, but so stupid. She didn't understand how Chen Yuan could do this. After that, we are shown the protagonist, who was yawning. Immediately, his friend told Chen to concentrate, because he couldn't fall asleep. The protagonist replied that he was not going to come at all, he forced him to. The girl asked Xingtao why he was so loud, because he was the only one scaring Chen Yuan. She added that they liked the look of a sleepy Chen Yuan, and asked why he had woken him up. She asked if everything was okay and if he was free tonight. Another noted that Chen was tired and she wanted to treat him to a cup of latte. Xingtao said that the girls said they would not come if he was not there. He would never understand them, the simple guys. He pointed his finger at the other girl and asked her to explain to him what she was doing here. She was the ex-girlfriend of the protagonist Tun Tun. She was reading the text. Her name is Xiao Kiwi. She left her lover and ran away with the son of a rich man, and then died, but she thinks she fully deserved it. There is no need to look for the killer. The teacher asked her to calm down, because if she continued to cry, they would not be able to continue. Xingtao replied that Lin Shudong had found out that he would be here. That's how I got involved. He asked what he had done to her, because he had heard that she had recently been to the doctor. The protagonist felt that he seemed to have gone a little overboard with her. She really hurt him, but after what happened, she really seemed to repent. The protagonist wondered if she was to blame, but she didn't deserve to die for it. He asked himself if he was really that heartless. Immediately, one girl turned to the protagonist and said that there were rumors around the university that he was the rich lone wolf and asked if it was true. Another replied that it was true, because he had the same nickname. The protagonist was surprised and decided to answer, but Lin Shudong was confused and eavesdropped. Immediately, someone did not let the protagonist answer and said that if Chen Yuan was really the lone wolf, then he would tear off his head and play football with it and laugh. The lone wolf spent about 100 million in the shark, and he's baking for every coin. The protagonist recognized him and asked if it was really him. He took Lin Shudong and greeted her. His name is La Yuntao. He's the owner of this store. He noticed her a long time ago and asked if he would share the chat. The girl was confused and did not know what to answer, and blushed violently. 1:42. The protagonist remembered that this Lai Yuntao was his sworn enemy in high school. Relying on his family's wealth and influence, he never shied away from such methods. He was constantly beating him, and not only alone, but also in a crowd. Liu deliberately provoked the protagonist to aggression. The protagonist decided to let him show off. It's lucky for him that Chen doesn't want to show off too much in front of his classmates. He's just going to give her some kind of checkup. The protagonist stood next to Lai Yuntao and decided to introduce his rich friend to them all. They studied together in high school. He studies at 985 universities, runs his own company, owns assets worth tens of millions. It can be said that he is the deity of wealth. Everyone was surprised by his words, in particular Lin Shutong, who blushed deeply. The protagonist spoke about himself. He's really not the lone wolf they're cooking about. He just received a small compensation for the renovation of an apartment building. About 3 to 5 million, that's all. Li reflected that the protagonist has property worth tens of millions. Lin Shutong was surprised that Chen Yuan was not a lone wolf and realized that she was mistaken. On the one hand, the best student from the university is 985, with a fortune in the tens of millions. On the other hand, someone she likes, but not particularly rich. Lin Shutong's disposition quickly began to fall down. The system reported that he was no longer an object of worship. Its location is now 15 points, and the protagonist was delighted. The girl agreed with Li and gave him the phone. She smiled maliciously and thought that even a fool would make the right choice. Li turned to the protagonist and showed how it happens in this world. His girlfriend just gave him her WeChat and laughed in his face. He approached him and added that last time he beat him up just like a stray dog, and now he's just going to run him over. The protagonist was shocked by his words. He told the guy that he and this Chen Yuan were classmates. He was very pleased with him today. Everything is free for this table today, and that guy agreed. The protagonist covered his face and started laughing hard. The protagonist's friend asked what was wrong with him. Shen replied that everything was fine. It was just a sudden epiphany. Looking at Lin Shutong, who was wearing makeup, he thought that he had given her the opportunity to fix everything. But who is to blame for the fact that she cannot overcome herself? From now on, he won't even show a minimum of empathy towards her, because she doesn't deserve it. Li waited for the protagonist at the exit and asked if he was already leaving. Tomorrow, he and his former classmates are going to Jeju and asked if he would like to join. The protagonist was surprised that there would be a graduation party tomorrow and looked back. He thanked him for the invitation and assured him that he would definitely be there. 1:43. After they show us that they have already gathered in Jeju 888, someone said that they had not seen each other for 100 years and decided to drink to themselves. Liu stood up and told everyone to eat and drink. All expenses are on him. He's not going to skimp on them today. After all, money is for spending it and laughing. The girls thought he was so generous and thanked him, and the guy said it was good old Yun Tao, and since childhood, he saw potential in him. Liu replied that it was not worth such pleasantries. It was better to let them say a few kind words about him when Joyu came. The guy understood who Mr. Lai was expecting. He asked him not to worry, because he and Xiao Royu are the perfect couple. Talented, beautiful, and from a good family, they will help. The protagonist also felt that this rooster would not miss a single opportunity to show off. Immediately, the door opened. I'm showing you Xiao Royu herself, who apologized for making them wait so long, and Liao Jia was behind her. Xiao Royu said that the personal driver went on vacation, but the taxi took a little longer than usual. Immediately, the protagonist looked at her and thought that she was a ray of sunshine that illuminated his path all 3 years of high school. So mysterious and noble, like an incredibly complex equation that's crazy. The guys were constantly fighting over the girl and shouting that no one should touch her. Immediately, the protagonist smiled and decided to act. He approached her and noted that they had not seen each other for a long time and asked if she would like to share a chat for further communication. Liu began to get angry and considered him a lousy dog who was climbing up to his girlfriend, and therefore wanted to teach him a lesson. The girl agreed to his request and agreed. She assumed that she had not met this man and that they did not know each other. Immediately, the system reported that the object was successfully connected. Its attractiveness index, 9.2. Location at the moment, 0 points. After Royu becomes his fan, he will receive 35 points. Prize skill, knowledge of 4 languages. Liu was shocked, because Chen Yuan had not been very persistent before, but now he suddenly became so cool. Liao Jia was surprised by his words, and told him that he was asking to be friends with the sons of rich people and then just chase them. And she asked if it was cool. She got up from the table and asked if he thought she didn't know. He's stalking several people from wealthy families. He even dragged Liu Wenj into it. They're all glorified scumbags. He has no idea how many innocent girls they've screwed over. Immediately, a guy decided to stand up for the protagonist and said that this was obviously some kind of nonsense. Liao Jia shouted that it was true. Liu Wenj just played with her feelings and threw them away like an unnecessary toy. After parting, he immediately found another one. Now her heart is broken and she started crying. Some people started to get angry and said that he was some kind of bastard and were sure that Chen had taken Xiao Royu's contact and would now sell it to one of these scumbags. The girls tried to calm Liao Jia down and told her not to cry, because such men are not worth it. They also added that they did not want to sit at the same table with such a person. Xiao Royu's disposition dropped to -10 points. Liu told the protagonist that if he didn't have enough money, he could help him. He has a job for everyone. After all, he is also the son of rich parents. It is better to work with him than with such people. At least he earns money in an honest way, and had a laugh. The protagonist thought that Liu Jia had decided to accuse him of all mortal sins, and Li Yuntao was right there. He realized that they had conspired and that if this information was not refuted, it would spread everywhere. He thought they had dug a hole for themselves this time and picked up the phone. He texted Zhang Nuotian to bring his LaFerrari to the entrance of Jeju restaurant. 1:44. After that, they finished dinner. People said they didn't expect anything less from a 4-star restaurant. It was incredibly delicious. They thanked Li for the treat. The protagonist's friend noted that no matter what anyone says, money is important in their time. Yuntao is so solid with them at once. Another asked where they were going next. Lai felt that Chen and Liu Wenj would not even dare to look anyone in the eye now, and that this was a victory. Lai immediately turned to Royu and said that he could take her home. Today he will become her personal driver, and there's no way he's going on vacation. The girl was embarrassed and replied that it was not necessary at all. Immediately, a guy came up to Li and said that he was just looking for him. He asked if he could repark the car. Li got angry because of his words. He replied that he pays money for food and service, and he can park his car. It's just nonsense. The guy explained that these were the rules. After 21, their parking spaces are only available for VIP guests. One of these guests is currently waiting, so he asked him to grant his request. Li was surprised and wanted to see how VIP he was. Li walked over to his car, where there were many other cars. He leaned against the car and noted that now they would find out who they had with such habits. Immediately they saw LaFerrari. More than 20 million. He had only seen one like it at car shows. Zhang Huotian from Zhang Group came out of it. Li was embarrassed because he didn't think it was him. Jia is known in the upper circles of the children of rich people. Fortunately, he did not confront him. Immediately, he shook Chen's hand, which shocked Lai. The protagonist thanked director Zhang for making him travel so far. He replied that there were no problems. They're brothers, after all, and it's an honor for him to bring his car. Lai shouted that it was Chen Yuan's car, and he didn't understand why Zhang Huotian was so polite to him. The girl was surprised that the protagonist was so rich and asked if he wasn't just following the rich. Shen Liu's friend was delighted that they had finally woken up and assured him that he could buy a dozen cars like Yuntao. The protagonist wanted to introduce Zhang to one of his former classmates. He is also a fairly well-off person. Immediately, the girls asked Liu Jia what she was talking about at all, and realized that she was just trying to humiliate Chen Yuan, and Liu Jia herself did not know what to answer. Roy realized that Li Yuntao and Liu Jia were just trying to slander Chen Yuan. She also considered the protagonist to be a really noble and well-mannered person, because he did not even try to justify himself. She found him a very interesting guy, and her disposition grew to 10 points. The protagonist saw this and smiled. He approached her and asked Xiao Royu if she would let him give her a ride. The girl agreed with a smile on her face. They got into the car and sped down the road, and all the remaining girls thought that Chen Yuan was so cool and handsome, and therefore they were jealous. Liu immediately turned to Shang and said that he had once said that the gap between some people is greater than between people and stray dogs, which made Li Yuntao very angry. 1:45. The protagonist and the girl were driving along a busy night road. The girl, looking at Chen, realized that she had acted recklessly. They've only known him for a little while, but I already jumped into his car and wondered if he was bad. Immediately, the protagonist turned to her and said that he had noticed something. This is the keychain on her purse, Ultraman. The girl was surprised that he knew who it was and blushed. The protagonist replied that he liked Ultraman too. He especially liked Dick. He thinks his transformation form is the coolest. Xiao Royu said that she thinks the same way. She has watched it since she was a child. Unfortunately, none of her friends then shared her interests. The protagonist looked at the girl, which made her embarrassed. Xiao turned away and pouted in embarrassment. After that, a smile appeared on her face and she blushed. The protagonist was surprised that Xiao Royu could be so active and lively. He didn't know if the eternally distant and indifferent expression on her face was her mask. It's like a defense mechanism. Looking at her happy face, I want to protect this beauty. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was in love. After that, the protagonist arrived right at her house. The protagonist made a strange gesture with his hands and said that he was very glad to get to know her from this, so different from the usual side. The girl repeated this gesture and asked to be called simply Joyu and thanked him for giving her a ride. Then they looked at themselves in silence and stood in strange poses. After that, they started laughing at it. He started to leave, and the girl thought that Chen was very interesting. He does not consider her infantile and naive, not like these fat old men. After that, the girl entered her home. Immediately, her mother asked her where she had been all this time and if she had seen the time at all. The girl, taking off her shoes, wanted to explain herself. She walked past her mother and her mother asked her what she thought about that date. The mother replied that she was aware that her father's company was not doing well, and therefore the investments of the Khan family were more important to them than ever. They can't do anything about it. Tears appeared in the girl's eyes and shouted that no one cares about her happiness at all. She didn't understand why she should marry this playboy from the Han family. The mother was surprised by her question and answered because they raised her. She eats, dresses, has fun, lives for their money. If her father's company comes to an end, then so will their family. Immediately, the father began to descend from the second floor. The mother said that Han Xiaogang is really not the best partner, but he is at least the best of the worst. Men take up their heads after marriage. The mother asked if Xiao wanted her to kneel down and beg her. The girl started crying and replied that she knew everything. Immediately, tears fell right on that Ultraman figurine. 1:46. After that, the protagonist watched the news on his phone. Someone was buying himself a new watch, and a new streamer appeared. Immediately, someone mentioned everyone so that everyone would look sooner. He was wondering what Zhang Huotian was doing. There was news that a date arranged by the parents, and immediately an engagement. A strong alliance or fierce competition. Is the Xiao family's company on the verge of collapse? Xiao Royu will marry Han Xiaogang. The protagonist was surprised and did not understand what else it was. He was surprised that Xiao Royu was getting married. He remembered all the times he had seen her. Even when I was still a schoolboy and looked at a girl from the window. He liked her a lot and that's why he panicked a little. Shen clenched his fist tightly and firmly decided to act. This time, he will no longer take a passive position. He will no longer be just an observer. Immediately, the woman asked the guy if it was Chen Yuan. The guy replied that it was him, just like in the video. Short-sleeve t-shirt, huge shorts. The girl immediately put her hand in front of him, which surprised him. The woman greeted him. Her name is Sheng Shui and asked how he would like to be featured on the internet. She also gave him her business card, Sheng Shui's dream media company. The protagonist walked forward and said he wasn't interested, but thanked him for the offer. Sheng was surprised by his words. She noted that he rejected the offer so decisively and wondered if he had already signed a contract with another company, so she needed to change tactics. Sheng Shui ran after him and asked him to wait. They are a serious, stable company. They can offer him a good salary. Immediately, she caught up with him and stood in front of him and completed what was most important. Their company is actively supported by a lone wolf, the same rich man who distributes money on the Shark platform. If he doesn't sign a contract with them, a lone wolf will be able to block his way into the media sphere. The protagonist realized that she was a very nasty madam. And why does he mention the lone wolf at all? This is who this lone wolf couple is and she dares to threaten him with it. The woman came up to him and asked if he agreed. The protagonist realized that this lady thinks that he can't answer her in any way. He picked up the phone and started typing something. If he can't, it doesn't mean that others can't. Sheng and her assistant were surprised. The protagonist wrote to the rich people's chat that he needed help. He asked if anyone was familiar with the Dream Media Company. Here a lady named Sheng Shui is trying to threaten him using his own name. He asks you to help him figure it out. Immediately, one guy replied that Chen should provide it to him. In Seoul, they will generally forget that there was a woman with that name. After that, the protagonist put the phone away and a little time passed. The woman leaned over to seduce him and asked if he had thought it over carefully. Immediately, her boss started calling her on the phone and she was surprised. She took the call and he started yelling at her that she was a crazy woman and should come back to him on the carpet. He asked if she even thinks before doing such a thing. The woman was very scared and did not even know what to answer. Immediately, Chen began to run further. He did not understand how the Han group dared to take away his woman. Now he would show them all. 1:47. After that, we are shown how the mother told Joyu that this was just a date with the heir of the Han family, and that she should not be so sour. The two of them were sitting in the car and she added that the situation of their family's company leaves much to be desired. Her father experienced such stress, running and asking for help from everyone and everything. And now the Khan family is ready to help them, and they don't demand much in return. They should just make friends. This Han Xiaogang seems like a pretty humble guy. They just need to make contact. Immediately, the girl received a new message and she reached for the phone. The protagonist wrote to her and asked where she was. The girl replied that she was going to the Royal Hotel for family business. The protagonist understood her and replied that when she arrived, she should tell him the exact location and wait for him. Royu was surprised and did not understand how she knew Chen Yuan. The girl thought about it, because if you compare with this stupid Han Xiaogan, Chen Yuan is much more handsome. She blushed a little from her thoughts. Her father immediately called her and said that he had never asked her for anything, but now he was asking her to be understanding about what was happening, and asked if she would help him. The girl silently thought about it, but then she replied that she understood her father. After that, they show us the same hotel. The car drove up there and they were already being met. All three got out of the car and were greeted. They also said that Director Khan was waiting for them in conference room 305 and they should follow him. After the four of them went forward, the guy noted for himself that he had heard before that the daughter of the Zio family was an incredible beauty, but it was better to see once than hear 100 times. It's really interesting. He was sorry that soon young Mr. Khan would leave nothing of her. Immediately, the girl noticed her father's suitcase and was embarrassed. She didn't understand, because it was just a meeting, so why would he need so many documents? After that, they went into the office and the man asked them to come in. Director Han greeted Director Zio and told Zio gang to make tea for the guests. After all, they are almost one family already. Immediately, the girl noticed one document. These were an agreement on marital property, as well as a prenuptial agreement for real estate and an agreement on the transfer of shares. She realized that this was not just a meeting. She also thought that her father was up to something. 1-48. Han Corporation is one of the largest corporations in Seoul. They own a lot of companies and are associated with shadow industries. At the helm of the company is Han Sushui, who is famous for his roguishness and desire for profit. Sushui told Royu that she had grown up and become a wonderful woman. Royu thanked the man for the compliment and wrote to the protagonist that she was in room 305. Han Xiaogang immediately came up to her and noted that she was there too. He hadn't been able to sleep or eat since their last meeting. She came to him in his dreams. He also took her hand and added that she should not worry. His father will help her family overcome any difficulties. The girl pulled out her hand and thanked him in embarrassment. He took hold of her back and asked her to be a little more polite. After all, they are almost one family, and grabbed the left bun. The girl threw his hand away and asked angrily, "How dare he? Who wants to be a family with him?" and ordered him to take his hands off. Her father turned to her and asked how she was talking to Xiaogang, and noted that it was rude. The girl started to get angry, but she couldn't say anything to her father. He turned to Director Khan and assured him that his daughter was not intelligent enough, so it was not worth paying attention to her. She really thinks that she and Xiaogang are perfect for each other, and laughed. Han Sushui laughed and asked him to sit down and take a look at the documents. The guy said that this is a share transfer agreement. He will be able to get acquainted with the additions in detail. According to the agreement, the Han family will transfer 100 million to Zio Corporation for the purchase of 20% of shares, provided that Royu becomes Xiaogang's legitimate wife. 100 million yuan will be gradually transferred to his company's account. As for her daughter, the last transfer will take place after Joyu gives birth to the heir of the Han family. The girl was very surprised. Immediately, the girl snatched the document. She read it and was surprised that they were talking about marriage and children here, and assured that this would not happen. The girl began to sob and shouted that her father had deceived her. He just wanted to sell his daughter. The mother asked Royu to calm down a little. The girl shouted that she did not want to calm down. She didn't understand. If they have business problems, they are even ready to sacrifice their daughter's life, and they should not pretend that they are not aware that Xiaogang indulges in gluttony, drunkenness, debauchery, and gambling. There's no way she's going to marry him. Immediately, the father hit his daughter. She was as surprised as possible by this. 1-49. Her father shouted that she was a spoiled child. Their family has problems, but she still thinks only about herself. He did not understand why he was being punished. The girl was surprised by her father's words and was shocked. Her mother told Royu that she had to understand her father. He's doing all this for their family. She's always been a sensible girl. If the Yuanheng Corporation falls, so does their family. Royu turned around and asked how she could. If the company has problems, why not make a little more effort to get this crisis over? She, mother and dad, they can do it together. Immediately, the mother fell to her knees. She took her daughter's hand and began to beg her. She asked me to take pity on her poor mother. Everyone in the room was surprised, including Joyu. Immediately, the daughter asked what she was doing and asked her mother to get up. She replied that she had no choice. They're desperate. If she does not agree to this marriage, she will not rise. Royu was surprised and didn't know what to say. Xiaogang told Royu that he really liked her very much and just had to accept his offer. He promised that he would get a star from the sky for her, and he asked her to look at her mother, what she had brought her to. The girl did not know if this was her fate. Being born into such a family implies a certain responsibility, and imagined that she was like in a cage. Royu said that she agreed and asked her mother to stand up and make it so. The mother praised her daughter. The father noted that he was overreacting. She understands, and she shouldn't take his words to heart. She's their only daughter. Sometimes they can let their emotions run wild. Han Sushui lit a cigar and said that since there were no more objections, they should continue with Director Zio's contract. The man agreed with him and replied that contact is the most important thing. Sushui replied that the sooner they sign, the sooner the wedding will take place, and the money will be credited to their account. Han Xiaogang licked his lips thinking about her words that she looked down on him and did not want to become his wife. He wondered what kind of proud and arrogant woman would be in bed and laughed. They all started the contract signing procedure. The protagonist immediately appeared and knocked down the door, saying that someone here was trying to kill him. Royu turned around and was surprised. Also, everyone else in the room looked at him in surprise. 1-50. Chen the Angry asked which of them was the lucky groom major. He was so brave and wanted to check everything out. Joyu saw the protagonist and was glad that he really came. Immediately, Han Xiaoging ran at him and asked where the bastard came from and asked if he was tired of living. The protagonist hit him and even knocked out his teeth. Xiaoging just flew away and hit the chairs. The protagonist said that he was incompetent and could complain to daddy. Xiaoging didn't understand how he dared to hit him. The guards immediately appeared and also asked how he dared to hit the young gentleman and wanted to die. Another guard asked if he knew which people he had broken into and was now considered a corpse. The protagonist was surprised by their words and replied that there are two old men here. One wants to sell his daughter and the other buys her. He added that they should only try to touch him. He will make sure that their Han family disappears from Seoul forever. Immediately, Han Sushui stopped his guards. He understood that the deal with the Zio family was strictly confidential. The public and those close to them think that this is just a date organized by their parents. This guy not only knows what's going on here, but also had information on how to find them. He knew it wasn't that simple. Sushui told the protagonist that he did not know his last name, but would be happy to pay him a visit when the schedule allows. The protagonist replied that he did not think he had enough competence for this. Xiaoging shouted, "How dare he talk like that?" The father shouted at his son to shut his mouth. He didn't bring him up enough. I have to think 3 times before I say it and stay out of adult conversations. The protagonist asked Joyu not to worry, because he would help her family. The girl was delighted and agreed with him. The protagonist grabbed the contract and Father Royu was outraged because of this. He asked him if he wanted to sell her for 100 million and noted that he underestimated his daughter. 20% of the company's shares. It's because of old age or problems with the head. The protagonist tore up the contract and said that they would do the following. He will give him 500 million and buy 60% of the shares. Everyone was surprised by this amount. Sushui calculated that in order to be able to cash out such an amount, the company's revenue must be above 10 billion. He reads people like open books, but he can't understand this guy, so he thought it was weird. My father figured that with 500 million he could not only revive the company, but even expand it. The protagonist added that, of course, he would give such money not just for beautiful eyes. He has a requirement. Immediately, he pointed his finger at the girl, which surprised her. She thought he wanted to buy her for 500 million. 1-51. She dropped her bag in shock. She also fell to the floor herself and assumed that he was the same as all of them. He also believes that he is just a commodity that can be sold and bought at his discretion and began to cry. The protagonist said that 60% of the corporation's shares should be transferred to Zio Roy. This is his condition. As soon as this is documented, 500 million will be credited to the account. The girl was very happy. She imagined that the bird cage was open, and the swallow flew out of the cage. She believed that real heroes really exist. Chen Yuan is her hero. Royu began to cry with happiness and her disposition quickly grew. At the moment, the location was 85 points. Immediately, the guy informed Chen that a new contract had been prepared and he had to sign here. The protagonist also asked Joyu to sign. No one else will be able to tell her what to do. The girl was very confused and did not know what to say. He and she signed everything and 500 million yuan was credited to the parents' account. The mother informed her husband that the money had arrived, and therefore the two began to rejoice. The man asked Chen if this was really his requirement. The protagonist agreed and asked why he asked. He leaned over to him and added that he was thinking about the prosperity and decline of their company. If in the future they force Royu to do what she doesn't want, he will show them what a fine line there is between these concepts, and also what real agony is. He was greatly surprised by these words. After that, Chen said that they were done here and could leave with Royu. Han Sushui immediately replied that his handwriting was amazing. He is delighted. His son allowed himself to offend him, and he asked for forgiveness for him and asked that he not hold a grudge against him. Sushui noted for himself that he transferred 500 million without batting an eye. Only the richest people in the country could do something like this. He understood that this man was rich and influential, and therefore it was not worth entering into a confrontation with him. Han Soyagai shouted to his father that Chen had started it first. Sushui slapped him and told him to shut up, calling him an ungrateful child. All the greatness and funds of the con company will go down the drain if they fall into the hands of such an idiot. The protagonist and Joy left, and the father wanted to give his son a good spanking. After that, they left the building. The girl got into his car and thanked him for saving her. The protagonist replied that everything was fine, because this was not the first time. He himself wanted to turn on the music, but for some reason it did not turn on.
And how Zio Royu was riding her bike and someone noted that she was so inattentive at such a late time of day. He's probably not afraid to meet bad people. Then her lantern began to shine very strongly and someone covered it. The evil guys surrounded her and the girl with fear in her eyes asked who they were and what they needed. One of the guys replied that it was nothing special. Money has been tight lately, and he asked to borrow some change. Immediately, the guy with the mohawk grabbed Xiao Royu and even tried to lick her, saying that it was okay if she didn't have money. She's such a beauty and they can take it in kind. The girl replied that she did not know them and they had to let her go, otherwise she would call the police. The guys told her to scream to her heart's content. The louder the shouting, the funnier it will be, and they laughed. Xiao shouted in denial and to be let go of her. The protagonist immediately flew in and pushing the guy away told her to run, and she was surprised. He grabbed him and yelled at her to run away and not turn around. Without hesitation, the girl turned to run away. The guys started beating up the protagonist and didn't understand where this guy came from. He ruined everything for them, so they beat him. Xiao ran away and was then too scared to figure out who had saved her. When she came to her senses and brought the police to the scene, it was already over. She burst into tears and really thought that she would never meet the man who saved her then. She was very happy and could not even think that it was him and blushed with happiness. Her affection for Xiao Royu has increased by 10. As a result, her disposition was already 95 points, and you can counterattack. But she wanted to kiss him. The system found that the owner's expenses amounted to 500 million. And the cashback of 50 million was successfully accrued. Xiao Royu becomes a fan of the protagonist. His reward, 35 power-up points and knowledge of 4 foreign languages. His strength was already 29, morale 15, agility 19. He was stronger than the average person. His skills, dancing, 4 languages. The protagonist turned to the system and was shocked because everything happened so quickly. He didn't even use trumps. However, looking at her, he realized that it wasn't even a bad thing. He was thinking that this time he would not just be a bystander. Now he has the strength and opportunity to be near her and show his feelings. He will not let down Chen Yun from the past, who suffered for everything. Immediately, he approached her, which made the two of them just shocked and blushed with embarrassment. They reached out to each other and almost touched lips. Immediately, someone called his phone, which they quickly turned away from and became even more embarrassed. It turned out that Zhao Yuki had called him. 1:53. The protagonist took the phone and Zhao Yuki told Chen Yuan that she had already moved into the villa. "I've been doing nothing but moving things for the last couple of days," and asked if he knew what would happen tomorrow. Chen replied that of course he knew. Tomorrow is her birthday. He has already prepared a gift. The protagonist felt that Chairman Zhao, as always, was not at the right time. Zhao Yuki agreed with him and asked him to dispense with very expensive gifts. This time, many classmates were invited to the holiday. It would be awkward in front of them. And behind the girl, the workers carried her things at full speed. The protagonist understood her and replied that then he would have to think about what to give her. He was a little upset that she had cut his idea in the bud and did not understand what he should do with his Ferrari now. Immediately, her friend asked Yuki where to put it and asked her to stop talking. Zhao replied that she would come now and then told the protagonist that she could no longer speak, because I was not waiting for business, and said goodbye. She started dancing around and going to her friend, because now she has a house. The house is worth 60 million and it's beautiful, and therefore Zhao was very happy. At this time, the protagonist was surprised that Xiao Royu did not even ask who called. The protagonist said that one of the classmates was celebrating her birthday tomorrow and asked if she wanted to go. Chen understood that, whatever it was, if he asked her to go, it would neutralize any suspicions. The lies interviewed as the truth are hard to unravel. The Art of War by Chen Yuan. Xiao replied that she had to refuse. There will be a large-scale discussion of what happened at home. Besides, these are his friends, not hers. She was thinking that some questions were better left unanswered. In that case, it's not worth asking. The protagonist replied that he was sorry, because she would have been the most beautiful there. Xiao replied that she would definitely keep him company next time. Chen thought that he was just trying to be polite. If she agreed, it would be problematic. They imagined that this was a real sparring conversation. Xiao understood that there would always be girls around handsome and successful men. They won't take it away from her. She's confident in herself. After they got out of the car, Joyu thanked the protagonist for today and apologized for making him spend so much money. The protagonist approached her and replied that if she was really so worried about it, she could share the percentages and laughed. And she blushed. Immediately, she approached him and kissed him on the cheek. Then, as she left, she noted that this was his percentage. She had left her mark on him, which meant that he was hers. The protagonist gave her the thumbs up and thought that Joy was just beautiful. Then he turned around to get into the car and laughingly noted that today was such a busy day, and now he would like to play computer. Immediately, someone asked the protagonist if it was his car. The protagonist was surprised by the question and turned around. It was Tun Tun with his girlfriend, and looking at the car they were just in shock. 1:54. The protagonist did not answer her, which he just got into his car and loudly closed the door. A moment later, he drove away so fast that there was no trace of him. Tong Tong's girlfriend thought that Chen had definitely lied then, and he must be much richer than that Lai Yuantao. In other words, he was probably checking on her then. Tong was just shocked by her words, and she realized that Chen was testing her, and then she messed it up herself. She's really just an idiot. She understood it all and started crying. Tong Tong hugged her friend and said that she had made a mistake again. At such an important moment she had made a mistake again. Chen Yuan would never forgive her now. A friend noted that the Joker missed this opportunity. Then she looked at her with a cold gaze and added that she had no chance now. But if they were talking about her, then all was not lost, and the Joker was just shocked by her words. The Joker grabbed her friend by the shoulders and screamed and asked what he meant. Since when is she interested in Chen Yuan? The friend replied that Chen was good and did not see any rational reason not to do it. She asked why she could, but she couldn't. Song Rui thinks he's just tired of her. Who knows, maybe he'll like her, and her words made the Joker very angry. The Joker grabbed Song by the hair and called him cheap and asked what about their friendship. It was all a lie. In response, Song Rui grabbed the Joker by the hair and advised her to look at herself. She jumped on Wang Junkai herself because of his thick wallet. The Joker got even angrier and told Song to shut up, otherwise she would just kill her. The girl started fighting, and Song said that she had put up with her for too long, and June said that they were no longer friends. A lot of people gathered around their battle. Everyone was watching them closely and filming them on their phones. After that, we are shown the protagonist's university. The Joker was walking there and crying, because she doesn't have a boyfriend, a better friend, too, and was angry. She was thinking that the prettier Chen Yuan gets, the more they distance themselves from each other. If this continues, she really doesn't have a chance. Immediately, someone asked her not to cry and asked if she was Lin joking, and she turned around and was surprised. It was an acquaintance of Shen Shui who greeted the Joker. She handed her business card and asked the tearful Joker if she wanted to become an internet celebrity. She wants Chen Yuan back, after all. She has some ideas about it. 1:55. After that, we are shown the protagonist's dorm. Chen was in his room, staring at the ceiling, wondering what to give Zhao Yuki. This is a good question. If everything goes smoothly, then maybe we can counterattack today. He got up and left the room, thinking that he needed to get out to the store. There would be something to like. It's better than sitting here. Immediately, the protagonist's boss shouted that Lin Shudong had become a streamer. He didn't understand what she was doing at all, and noted that this was something new. The protagonist was very surprised with this news, and looking at the monitor saw that Tun Tun was talking about her relationship with a lone wolf. The Joker cried and said that she was his first love. They met at the university in their first year. He was the first to take the initiative. At that time, she did not know how rich he was, but she considered him quite honest and decent, and therefore reciprocated. He often bought her a gobeaju, and once even worked part-time for 3 months to buy her a new phone. They were happy and loved each other, but eventually he didn't need her and cried even more. We are immediately shown the chat messages. Liu Danzi wrote to tell her to go to the doctor. A lone wolf would never pay attention to someone like her. Pepper wrote that this is another woman who wants to denigrate him. The plane advised her to do something so that she would not invent such nonsense, and asked why such a person would earn extra money. Dal asked me to write to him in private messages. He wants to know more about the lone wolf. The protagonist was very angry with her. Chen's friend didn't know if it was true. Lin Jokan had something with a lone wolf. Chen did not understand how she was not ashamed. She was still making a victim of herself. He thought about it. Because Lin Shudong is not that smart, she would never have thought of such a thing. Picking up the phone, he added that someone was using the name of a lone wolf and pretending to be a victim. Someone put her up to it. The protagonist called someone and said that he needed his help. He asked him to find out which company owns account 187,639, and he agreed with him. After the protagonist was written that this is the media company Dream, a legal entity registered in Shen Shui. Chen remembered her and noted that she provoked him over and over again. He doesn't think he can handle her. After that, they show us the corporation building. The subordinate told Shen that the popularity index of Lin Shudong's stream exceeded 100,000, and it was just incredible. At that time, she was drinking coffee and laughing, noted that such methods work flawlessly. After that, we are shown the past. The boss yelled at her and asked if she was even sane. She understands who she's threatening. One word from him and their company is over. The girl was surprised and asked if the boss was drunk because he was just a student. The boss told her that Chen was the rich lone wolf. How can she be just a student? Shen was surprised that he was the one who spent tens of millions in Shark. Then her subordinate found information that Chen's first love was Lin Shudong. He had been courting her for 3 years, and now they had broken up. Shen thought it was great, because the lone wolf would never forget her. As they say, first love is so wonderful. She glared ahead and thought this was her chance. Shen thought that the Joker would become popular and this would cool his ardor a little. That's when he'll realize he shouldn't have refused her. She thought she was just a genius and immediately got a call from her boss. She was informed that their company was blocked on the entire internet space, from which she was simply shocked. 1:56. After that, we are shown how the protagonist quickly wrote on the phone. He wrote that he did not like this company, to put it mildly. He wouldn't want his girlfriend to have anything to do with her. It would be great if this company disappeared once and for all. After that, they show us the Morning City. We are shown how the guy was told to terminate his contract with the Dream Media Company, and he agreed. The girls told her to double her fees to lure all the streamers out of the dream. Then they reported that they were evading taxes and wanted to check it out. The guy in the car was informed that he had liquidated their assets. The corporation was literally struck by the lightning of justice. Shen was shocked that they were blocked and cooperation was suspended. The guy told Shen that letters had just arrived from their largest shareholders about withdrawing their capital. According to the contract, they have to pay 10 million to buy back their shares. Shen was shocked and did not understand how their company could have so much. She started shaking and didn't realize who had done all this. After that, bankers came to Shen and reported that she had overdue her loan for 6 months, and therefore the court froze all their assets. The girls then asked Shen for forgiveness, but they decided to resign and wished her success. Then she turned around and the guard told her that if she did not pay the fee for the use of the property, they would have to talk in a different way. After a while, evening began to fall. The two of them were literally forced to pack all their belongings into a box and kicked out of the company. Shen thought it was all a lone wolf, only he had such connections, but she didn't understand why. Shotan's account was blocked for violating the user agreement. The men replied to the protagonist that there were no problems with his request and they would deal with it. The protagonist was delighted and replied that it was well done, we need to treat them somehow. After he got into the car and strapped himself in, he thought that now he needed to get a gift for Chairman Zhao. Immediately, Shen approached the protagonist's car and he was very scared, because he did not understand what it was. She started crying to him and told him she was wrong, she needed to be smarter. She asked the protagonist to make concessions to him, because she needs to survive somehow. The system then reported that the new Shen Shui facility was connected. Her disposition level was 0. The protagonist got angry at the system and did not understand why he needed it, because he was not interested in MILFs. From myself, I will say that the protagonist is a fool. Chen rolled down the window of the car and said that this time they would do with a warning, and she should know her place and not interfere with him. The car drove away quickly, and she fell to the floor, did not understand how she had not realized this before. This man is so courageous and handsome. Especially when she was ordered to get out, she got very excited and blushed. Her disposition increased by 10 points. The protagonist was driving a car and did not understand why her disposition had grown and considered that she was completely ill. 1:57. After that, they show us Zhao Yuki's house itself and people told her that this villa was just incredible. Such a house will cost at least 60 million. Her friends gathered and also told the chairman to confess she is the daughter of some secret millionaire, and they also want to, but Zhao denied everything. The girl asked Zhao if this was really her villa. The girl added that she and her father attended the Jiangjing auction and they definitely heard that this villa was purchased by a certain man named Hong. According to Confrontations, he was about 30 or 40 years old. This is the head of the International Relations Department. Zhang Lily, Zhao Yuki's sworn enemy. Zhao's friend started yelling at Zhang Lily and asked what she meant. Does she think that Kiki will cheat? A guy hugged Lily and noted that she was right. Mr. Hong celebrated his daughter's birthday here, where he had the honor to be present. She turned 12 years old. Immediately, all the people began to whisper and did not understand if this villa did not belong to Zhao Yuki and if she was his kept woman. Zhao Yuki's family is quite wealthy, but not that well off. After a moment, Zhao took the documents and put them on the table with a loud sound. Zhao told them to make sure for themselves and take a closer look at whose name was written in front of the owner column, and it was written there that it was Zhao Yuki. Zhao's friend said with a smile on her face that some people seemed to like humiliating themselves. But Lily was angry. Immediately, the girls came up to her. The blonde said she told them all. Chairman Zhao is not that kind of person. She wouldn't pretend to be someone she's not. She asked if it was really that profitable to stream and she wanted to too. Another girl commented that it was so cool. Chairman Zhao became popular and rich even before graduation. Zhao denied everything and noted that it was just luck. Then she turned around and looked at the door. She did not understand why the protagonist was still not there and thought that there might be traffic jams. After that, we are shown the protagonist, who stopped near the house and began to go out with a teddy bear, and was glad that he finally got there. There will be a lot of Zhao Yuki's classmates at the party today, so it's worth parking away so as not to attract too much attention. Immediately, the protagonist turned his attention back. A sports car stopped abruptly near him, which made the protagonist very scared. Immediately, everyone started shouting that it was a Ferrari 488 and thought it was Mr. Tan. It's his car, and it's worth over 4 million. A moment later, the car door opened and the guy's leg appeared. Tan got out completely and said on the phone that everything was correct, and they should drive up to Villa number 1. This is the first handsome man of Huan University, Tang Zuang. Then Tang and Chen looked at each other. Tang did not understand that Zhao Yuki had taste in it, because she even invited such a scumbag. Then he looked at his teddy bear and decided that it was not a gift, but just a laugh and a sin. Immediately, Zhao came out and was glad that he had arrived. She was waiting for him so much and two guys turned on her. 1:58. Tang stretched out his arms in the hope of hugging Yuki and wished her a happy birthday. Immediately, she dodged, which surprised him greatly. She approached the protagonist and he congratulated her on her birthday, and picked up the bear and asked if she liked the gift, and she thanked him, and Tan was just shocked. Tan did not understand if it was his imagination or if the ice had broken. He gave her a watch worth more than 2,000, but even she was not so happy with it. Yao Yuan once gave her a Prada bag for 20 grand, but Zhao Yuki refused to accept such a gift. He has been caring for her for a long time, but there is almost no exhaust and did not understand what kind of rat is hovering around her now. Immediately there was a red truck behind him and he was a little scared. He smiled maliciously and considered that now was his way out. Tan came up to her and said that he had also prepared a gift for her and she would definitely like it, and the girl was surprised. We are shown how three guys took out a large black box from a truck. He thought the rats belonged in the garbage. Now he would show him what a gulf there was between them. It was an imported Huaman CF6 piano. Tang felt that he was confident that it would be a great end to today's flow of gifts. He wished her a happy birthday again and asked if she liked it. The girl replied that she really liked it, but it was so expensive. She would give him back the day for him. Approaching the piano, Tan replied that he was glad that she liked it, but he would not accept any money. Besides this piano, he has another gift. He wrote a song for her and sat down at a chair. All the girls were literally in love with him and were happy that he would play. Last year he took part in a concert in Vienna. After that, he never sat down at the piano. Tonight is getting better and better and the girl wanted to film it for her classmates. Immediately, Tan put his hands on the piano. Then he started playing a beautiful melody. The girls thought it was incredible. His acting was just amazing. He and Zhao Yuki are a great couple. They look great together. Then Tang stood up and Zhao thanked him. He plays just great. She's even embarrassed for her skills. Tan replied that she got all the laurels. It's not worth it. Then he looked at the protagonist and added that this young man also wants to impress her. Let him play. 1:59. The protagonist smiled and felt that it seemed to him that this effeminate boy wanted to make him look bad. Chen agreed, since his classmate insisted that he should grant his request. Zhao was surprised that Chen Yuan could play the piano. Another girl noted that this guy was so poorly dressed, but did not know if he had the skill to play the piano. The other guy said they didn't understand. Tang wants to teach Chen Yuan a lesson and they should just watch it. Tang laughed and was very interested, because he thought that Chen was going to embarrass himself. The protagonist was angry, because he knew that he had never even tried to play the piano. Then he looked at his gain points and there were 35 of them, but he could have cheated. The system found that his piano playing skills were not developed. To develop this skill, you will need an additional 10 gain points. The protagonist was smiling, because with gain points, anything is possible. Then he looked at Tan and thought that this guy wanted to look good against the background of others, but this would not happen. He told the system that he needed a piano skill that corresponded to 50 years of practice. Immediately, the system began to act and implement this skill into him. Tan did not understand what was happening, because he felt that the energy coming from him had changed dramatically. The protagonist began to play. Tan was just shocked by this. Chen was playing the same tune that he had just played to her. It couldn't be. No one is able to memorize the notes after hearing them only once. The protagonist looked at him and asked if he was already in shock, but the best was yet to come. Then the protagonist decided to act differently and his hands almost began to disappear. Tang was surprised that Chen had accelerated, and he was playing so fast, but not a single false note. The protagonist played so fast that it seemed that he did not have two hands and did it with a smile on his face. People were just shocked that he was playing like that. It seems that this is a duet. Some even have double vision and have seen 4 of Chen's hands. Tan didn't understand if this was what the teacher was talking about. A long-lost art. The protagonist used the technique of Beethoven's high-speed legato. Training in such techniques is particularly cruel. Will, talent, physical characteristics, one cannot exist without the other. And when a person masters it, each note sounds completely different and hits the very heart. He is ruthless to the listener's eardrums. The protagonist was still playing, and doing it even better than before. Then he finished and considered it a success, and steam was coming from him. All the people were just in shock, and therefore there was a deathly silence in the hall. 1:60. Then the protagonist took out a pack of cards and pulled one out. Then he brought it to the piano. With a deft movement of his hand, he lit it. After a moment, he walked up to Tang Zuwang and put his hand on his shoulder, which surprised him. Then, hugging him, Chen noted that he was actually not a bad player. He must keep trying, and he will succeed in the future. Then he put his cigarette in Tom's mouth. And as he left, he added that, however, the piano is a means of expressing one's emotions and feelings, and not a tool for fighting for favor. Tan was just shocked and agreed with him. All the people were shocked and thought he was a talent. No wonder Chairman Zhao looks at him with different eyes. Indeed, everything is clear now. Tang Zuwang dug himself a hole on his own. He wanted to demonstrate how cool he was, but who would have thought that a master like Chen Yuan would be here? Tang Zuwang had disgraced himself. Zhao thought that she had an eye for standing people. Chen Yuan is not only incredibly rich, but also godlessly talented. The protagonist was sitting on the couch and the girl thought that such a man was the best of the best. A real treasure. Her disposition increased by 5 points. Then the system reported that the location of Zhao Yuki's linked object had reached 95 points and it was possible to counterattack. And the protagonist was surprised, but the system added that his piano playing skill had been significantly improved, reaching level 60. Zhao Yuki becomes his devoted fan, and 26 gain points are received. In total, 78,160,000 yuan were spent on Object 3, and its cashback is 7 million. His hands began to shake from the shock of this amount. The protagonist was delighted and thought that this was the biggest cashback from 60 million and that the villa was really worth buying. They gave me another 25 gain points and wondered where to use them. Zhao then told Chen Yuan that it was such a pleasant surprise and he turned around. The girl approached him and noted that she was very happy. The protagonist told her to consider it his second gift to her and asked how Chairman Zhao would thank him, and the girl blushed. Then she started laughing out loud, and Tang, standing behind her, thought that he had lost. He sat down in a corner and said again that he had lost and was panicking a lot. Then a guy noticed that King Bingsu had also come and was delighted. The protagonist was surprised on her behalf, and Zhao blushed a little and was surprised. She was the first beauty of the university. The guys considered her her goddess, and the girl was glad that she would finally see her in person. 1:61. King Bingsu, an icy beauty, has been ranked first in the beauty rankings for 4 years in a row. She is also the president of the Hunan University Student Committee. The girls were literally in love with her, and the guys were afraid. But most of all, she is known not for her appearance, but for her hostile attitude towards men. She would put them on their knees and they would tremble. For this reason, many are inclined to assume that she is for girls. Mostly because of her remarkable appearance, many people talked about her and Vice Chairman Zhao Yuki. However, according to neighbor King Bingsu, she experienced a kidnapping in early childhood. The police arrived in time. She was unharmed. They were able to save her from dirty things. However, since then she has come to hate men. Zhao took the protagonist by the hand and asked who he thought was cuter. The protagonist approached her and replied that in his eyes she was the most beautiful of all. He would like to stay as far away from a woman like King Bingsu as possible. There's something wrong with her. He just needs female fans, not potential killers. Immediately, Zhao began to call King to her and said that she was late, and the protagonist was surprised and asked why to call her. King came over and apologized to Yuki because there were traffic jams on the roads. Zhao replied with a smile on her face, replied that it was okay and decided to introduce Chen Yuan to her. She stood up to him and the protagonist nervously greeted her and added that he had heard a lot about her. She asked if he had just played the piano and he nervously agreed. She had heard that he had been quite active at the university lately. He jumps from one girl to another, ignoring their feelings. Talented, but immoral and trash. Her words literally hit the protagonist's heart. King turned around, and the protagonist got angry and thought she was crazy. Zhao hugged the protagonist and noted that King is always like that. She's sharp-tongued, but she has a kind heart and Chen shouldn't worry. Immediately, the system reported that the process was running. Her attractiveness index was 9.3. Current location -80, and a bonus skill, hand-to-hand fighting skills. The protagonist felt that this system was broken. Last time I hooked up a MILF with glasses for him, and now this King Bingsu. He doesn't need such women, and he didn't understand why his affection for her was 80. He just exchanged a few words with her. He trampled on the system, and Zhao was surprised. He did not know if he was such a womanizer and thought that this could not be. Looking at the beautiful King who was drinking tea, he said that it was all the fault of the system. 1:62. After that, they show us Zhao's night villa. The protagonist brought her a cake, and everyone around congratulated her on her birthday. Then the girl closed her eyes and made a wish. After a moment, the protagonist began to cut the cake, and everyone was happy. She was handing out a cake to the girls and telling them to help themselves. They should all have a good time today. And King asked Yuki if she had a minute. After all, she needs to talk, and Zhao turned around and was surprised. A moment later, they went out onto the balcony and looked at the moon. King told Yuki that she thought she should stay away from this Chen Yuan. Zhao was surprised and asked why. She replied, "Isn't it obvious? But you can count on your fingers who he hasn't started an affair with at university yet. She doesn't want her to fall into the hands of such a dishonest man. Besides, she has graduation soon. She plans to hand over the chairman's post to her and drank wine." Zhao was very surprised by her words that she would become the chairman. In the past, they had quite a few disagreements regarding the functioning of the student union. At the same time, none of them wanted to give in to the other. But she wants to give her this post. She was surprised and a little stressed. She thought that those rumors about her being a girl were really true. She didn't know if King had her eye on her. King was very confused and even panicked, saying that she respects her and her decision very much. But it seems to her that she does not have enough competence for this. And Chen Yuan is not at all what she thinks he is. She's already made up her mind, and she doesn't have to talk about it. King approached her and noted that love really dazzles. She told her to look at herself, where the strict and demanding deputy chairman had gone. Zhao blushed and said that in fact, she had already thought about leaving the student union. Then she would have more free time to spend with Chen Yuan. King thought Zhao was an idiot and didn't understand, yes, what was happening to her. Where is her responsibility and rationality? This guy is really dangerous to society. King's disposition dropped by 10 points again. The protagonist was just shocked, because he was just eating a cake. But her disposition had already reached -90. He didn't understand what was wrong, because he was just eating a cake and not touching anyone, and his disposition dropped by 10 points. After Zhao and King left the balcony, the birthday girl approached the guests and asked them to be careful on the way back and thanked them for coming and for congratulations. The protagonist was also leaving and Zhao asked Chen to wait. The girl said they needed to talk, and the protagonist was surprised. 1:63. After Zhao Yuki's favorability level increased, she became even more adorable. She just offered to watch the movie tomorrow, but it was in such a formal manner. He already thought that she would ask him to stay the night. From these thoughts, the protagonist bled and her face turned red. When he came out, he heard someone crying and howling. Looking back, he saw Tan sitting near his car and crying and asked that he had years of piano lessons, but did not know what to do with it. The protagonist looked there and realized that it was Tai Zuan, and was surprised that he was still here. He thought for a moment that some kind of ghost was howling. Immediately, Chen approached him and greeted him, and Tang was scared. The protagonist stood on the car and Tang, scared, asked if it was Chen Yuan. The hero was glad that he remembered his name and noted that it was very cute. The protagonist noted that it was okay that he lost a small piano game, but not to cry. It's not a shame to lose to the system. Tan got angry and asked what he was talking about, what his expression meant, and if he considered himself better than him. The protagonist jumped off the car and replied in denial, "He just takes everything to heart." He was so drunk that it was already hard to breathe. Tan the evil one admitted that a loser like him was playing better than him, and asked, "So what?" The status and security of his family are incredibly far from him. His Prada suit costs 48,000 yuan, accessories 38,000. The belt from Balenciaga is 18,000 yuan. a Ferrari car for 4 million yuan, and Gucci pants for 17,000. Immediately, he took out his car key and pressed the button to unlock it. Tan smiled maliciously and noted that surely a beggar like him didn't even have money for a taxi, and asked if he wanted a ride out of pity. Immediately, the protagonist opened the door of his car, and Tan was very surprised. Out of anger and shock, he broke the car key. He fell to his knees and noted that Chen was dressed like a poor man, but drove a Ferrari and got angry again. The protagonist in the car has already thought about what kind of movie they should watch tomorrow. Wolf Warrior 6 or The Mysterious Lands. Then, as he was driving, he saw Miss King on the road and assumed that he was waiting for someone. It's chilly at night now, she'll catch a cold in such a light dress. But it's none of his business, even if this crazy woman dies of cold and smiles. The protagonist quickly drove past her and said goodbye. He hoped that the location would drop even more points, he just doesn't care. Then he was surprised and looked back. In the side mirror, he saw that some guys began to molest King and even grabbed his arm, and the protagonist wondered what was going on. 1:64. A lot of guys surrounded the girl and asked if she was alone here. It's dangerous to walk alone at night, and doesn't she want them to protect her? The guy came to her place and added that they would do it for free. She'll just need to play with them for a bit and have a laugh. The girl got angry and asked what they were doing and assured that she would call the police now. Immediately, everyone started laughing at her words, and repeated that she was going to call the police. The evil guy licked his lips and considered her a shrew, and it's even more fun for him. Immediately, he writhed in pain and made a funny sound. She hit him right on his balls, which made all the guys stare and were shocked. Immediately, King turned around and began to run away. Xiao screamed violently in pain, and everyone tried to support the Gopnik. He was very angry and told them to stop talking nonsense and that they should catch this bitch. Immediately they chased after her and shouted at her to stop, but she ran away. King thought it was just a pack of wild dogs. If there weren't so many of them, she would have beaten them with her fighting skills so that her mother wouldn't recognize them. Immediately, she collided with the protagonist and hit him. Chen asked if she was okay. King looked at him and was surprised that he was here. Immediately, all the guys surrounded the two of them. Xiao came up and told the beauty that she was running. He's going to teach her a lesson today. King was very angry and thought that she had no words. She didn't understand how anyone could be so disgusting, and felt that nothing good should be expected from men. And this Chen Yuan, if it wasn't for him, she would have already run away and didn't understand why he even came forward. The protagonist told the guys to finish already. The 90s are long over, now the laws rule, not the people. He gives them 2 minutes to get them out. Xiao was surprised by his words and thought that a hero had drawn himself to save a beauty in trouble. He pointed at himself and added that he wasn't going anywhere. After that, they show us the beautiful moon. The protagonist beat and scattered all the guys. He looked at them with a satisfied face and said that it was necessary to heed his advice and wiped his hands. Then he asked King if she was okay. Her disposition dropped by 5 points, which made him very surprised. Her general disposition was -95, and he looked at her very angrily, because he did not understand what he had done wrong again.